I have confirmation of the agenda. So moved. Trevor, seconded by Bernie. All in favor? Carries. Any declaration of pecuniary interest? Bev?
Yes, sir. I'm just declaring a conflict of interest on the bills and accounts. They're 5.2.1. There's a check 504119 that's made out to my spouse, Tiffany Site, for reimbursement of supplies from the daycare. She's the full-time employee of the municipality.
Thank you. Any other? Seeing none, we'll move on. Public comments. This is an opportunity for anybody in the public to take 2 minutes to talk to anything on tonight's agenda. You can just step up to, well, maybe not. The podium's not there. You can stand up and say your name and where you live and make any comments you want on anything that's on the agenda tonight. Seeing nobody interested, we'll move on. Thank you.
We've never seen the agenda, so how can we make comments?
The agenda is on the website, and it's available, I believe, right over there at the door. And it can be picked up anytime Monday, all day Monday, like today, you could have picked up a, yeah, okay. For future reference. Okay, consent agenda. We have that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby adopt consent agenda 5.1.1 and 5.1.2, and further that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receives consent items 5.2.1 and 5.5.3.9 for information. Do I have a mover? Kevin, do I have a seconder? Chris, comments or questions on the consent agenda? Go ahead, Chris.
Yes, comment, and through you, Reeve, would be to staff. Sean, this is regarding the termination date of having a contract for the rental of the farmlands, of the lands that farmers can use. I think it was, August or something? That's not a relevant time for harvest. Like, can we move it to, say, December 1st or something?
The reason we set it for August 1st was in talking to some local farmers, some of the bigger guys. August gave them time to consider their fertilizer needs and to consider crop or seed selection for the following year. The fear was that if we had a renewal that was like right at the end of the year, they would miss that opportunity to make some decisions surrounding what they might want to do with the property.
Well, it's a hard one because if you have soybeans or corn, they're still in the field. So how do we deal with that? Say a termination is set?
No, sorry, through you, Reeve.
Yeah.
That August 1st date was a notice for termination. It wasn't the end date. The end date would still be the following year, but we thought it was fair for the farmers if, for example, council elected to not renew a lease for next year, they had to give them notice by that 1st of August date. If there was no notice by 1st of August, then at least the farmer could say, okay, well, I've got the field for next year and I can make whatever decisions I have to make with regard to fertilizer, with regard to seed. But no, the actual date would be December 31st, January 1st for termination.
Super.
Okay. Anybody else? I just have 3 quick ones I want to ask about. Check 00010, industrial clothing for $3,303. Is that an annual, or do you just kind of touch on that if possible?
Yes, Reeve, that varies based on need. So in this particular, we asked each public works employee to submit their needs for the upcoming year. Some of them, we had a bunch of new employees this year, so they get full kit, including winter gear. We had some of the other employees that have been around for a while, but their winter gear is in good shape, so they might see quite a bit less. So it'll vary from year to year based on condition of their PPE and their need.
Okay, thank you. Also, the check for 00057 for the Belgrave Arena was $26,259. Dawn, I thought that was a $20,000 check when I was on council before, or has it changed?
No, like it's two payments, we pay them in, total is about $54,000 per year. And that'll be a half year payment.
Oh, okay, okay. And the last one goes back to you, Donna, too, is the 000444 Morris Turnberry. We gave him $52,608. Is that for taxes, or can you?
It's
And if
like
you-
for
if you need-
building services, but what's the page number there?
Oh, honestly, I didn't take the page number down.
Okay,
Sorry.
sorry, what was the check number again?
000444. Donna, you know something? If you want to look it up and just get back to me, I'm fine with that. It just kind of stuck out.
Yeah.
Okay, I appreciate that. Any other questions or concerns? Seeing none, I call the vote. All in favor? Passes. Okay, we're going to move right into number 6, public meetings and hearings and delegations. 6.1, we have Paul Seabach, Seabach and Company, presenting the audit financial statements for the township. Sir Paul?
Thank
Welcome.
you very much, Your Honor. I guess we come annually, kind of two reasons. One is we're your auditors. If you have any questions, it's an opportunity to ask us. Then we also present the financial statements. What we've done is we have two reports. One is the financial statement. That's the one where we prepare. It's important because it's your financial report. It goes to ministry. It and the FIR is how the province sees your municipality. And then we also prepare a 2-page report that gives a little more information. It's more on a cash basis than ours is, and it shows a 5-year trend. So it just gives a little more information. Just a few, Donna's going to say, sorry.
I'm just gonna pull up yours.
She's going to keep you in line.
Yeah, just about the audit. We come here twice a year. We do an interim audit. Last year we came in November. We come for a couple of days. And we do our final audit. This year was in February. You know, the main thing is when we were here, we didn't find anything unusual that we bring to council's attention. Any unusual purchases, transactions, anything other than normal that we would do. When we are here, we're given full access to the financial records, so that's good. Anything we ask for is provided. Complete cooperation. You know, we deal mostly with the finance department, but you know, we also go to the rec center, fire hall, daycare. We go to all the departments and we receive, you know, no one likes to see the auditors, but we do receive full cooperation. An explanation, when you look at these statements, they show a surplus of $1.2 million. We're, by provincial regulation, we're obligated to produce the statements different than you would the budget you do for your mill rate. The two biggest differences are in our report, we don't show reserves. So in your report, you transferred 1.7 million out of reserves. So of course, that's an expense. We don't show that. That's one of the differences. Another thing, our expenses show depreciation, and on your report, you allow for the cash you spend on capital. So when you go from ours, and the report kind of does that, it shows how after we do the reserve transfer of 1.7 million, you ended up with basically a surplus of 179,000. So, you know, that's probably one of the most important things I can say tonight is that, you know, you at the end of the year, you're able to transfer 1.7 million in reserves, and you had a small surplus of $179,000. Other things, during the year, you spent $1.3 million in capital. You budgeted 1.7. There were some projects at the arena or Westcast and Memorial Hall you didn't do. Those were the two main ones. The main project you did last year in 2018 was switching the street lighting to LED. That was $450,000. In our schedule, we do show that your reserves increased to $12 million. They increased $1.7 million. It's important to know $7 million of that 12 is obligated to water and sewer. So like for general purposes, you're sitting around 5, which is good, positive. And then every year, you get a share of the federal gas tax, and you can defer that for, I think, up to 2 years. So last year you didn't spend that. So at the end of the year, you had 383,000. I'm sure you're using this year. So you do have some funds set aside that you built up during the year. And another important thing, during the year, you didn't take on any new debt. You later on, we'll see you have 4 loans for specific purposes. They equal $1.7 million, and during the year, you paid down roughly $180,000. So if we went to the report to council, the first page is basically the balance sheet. So it just shows everything where let me switch to that.
I don't know if they put it on.
Well, just going through it, it
They
just.
have it in their agenda pack.
Okay, it shows more detail. And so at the end of the year, you had $12.8 million in the bank. That's up because the reserves are up and you were able to put some money away. That being said, 6.6 million of that is allocated to general. The remaining 6 million is water and sewer funds. Your taxes receivable are lower. You did a better job collecting taxes. Receivables are a little lower. Those are things like, water, sewers, recreation, daycare, all the different things people don't pay you right away on time. So at the end of the year, they're outstanding. Then you have long-term receivables. That's simply TAL drain loans. So they show as a receivable and also as a kind of confusing. They show as receivable and also in municipal debt. Then one thing that's constant is your long-term investment, and that's your share of your shares, the cost of your shares in West Ontario Power Corp. So the municipality owns 7.7% of the shares of West Ontario, and when they were all valued, when the deal went through years ago, they were valued at $1.6 million, and we've always just showed them at cost because we really don't know the fair market value of those. So your total assets are $16.3 million, and things you owed at the end of the year, accounts payable. They're you always have payables, outstanding projects, payroll, etc. Deferred revenue, that's up a bit. I talked about the gas tax, $383,000 of that, 448 gas tax. And then we have to account for something called landfill closure. So we have to show in your books a liability on after you close your landfill site, how much it would cost, how much you would have to have sitting today to pay for your landfill closure cost for, let's say, the next 50 years. So every so many years, you get an engineer report and they work that. The variables are interest rates, how long your landfill site will stay open, how long you have to look after. So at best, it's an estimate, but this number is $339,000. And then we have a municipal debt we talked about, $1.7 million. So the difference between your assets and your liabilities, kind of on a cash basis, notwithstanding the landfill closure liability, are the net financial assets. That's kind of like what you have available to you. And you can see it's $12.6 million. And it's been increasing 7.9, 9.8 through the year. So that just says you're in a better financial position. Tangible capital assets, those are your roads, buildings, vehicles, etc. You started at 52 million, you added, as we said, the 1.3. We depreciate 2.1, you come back to the 51 million. Then the difference between your assets and your liabilities is your surplus, that's 64 million, which is a little misleading because that includes your 51 million tied up in your assets. Does anyone have any questions on the balance sheet?
Just a quick one. The West Ontario, you said we haven't changed the value of it for a decade.
Probably, I'm not 100% sure when that deal went through.
Yeah. So if those shares are worth a great deal more now, that would have quite an effect on our bottom line, would it not?
Yes, it was.
So I'm going to kind of look at Donna. Should we be looking into that, Donna, or just leave that neutral because it really means nothing unless we sell West Ontario?
Right, and we haven't talked about any plans for selling, so we can talk about it, maybe talk at the annual general meetings coming up
Yes.
at the end of the month, so we could have further discussions there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think the main thing there is you own about 8%.
Yeah.
And that's cost. The next page is basically the income statement, has revenues and expenditures. There's nothing two outstanding there. County fee subsidies, $1 million, you budgeted 605. That's, you received some extra money from the county for the daycare at the end of the year, and that's part of the money that went into reserves. When it says user fees, childcare, that's just the parent fees, not any money from the county. So your total revenues are 13.69 million. You budgeted almost 13, so that's one of the reasons you have a surplus, that you were able to put money aside for reserves. A lot of your expenditures were lower. Building, water quality, and that department was 60,000 less. Roads, I think you were less of staff. You had less winter work. That was 300,000 below. Water and sewer, you spent less on that. There's a lot of items that recreation, you spent 100,000 less, 1.3 versus 1.4. So all those things allowed the municipality at the end of the year to set aside the 1.7 million in reserves. Most of that is your surplus. So that's a little unusual to have that much set aside, and so many things go right where you got extra funding. You know, the landfill site had extra tipping, and then a lot of your expenses were lower. So if you were on your cash basis compared to your mill rate, you basically have a surplus after the reserve transfer of 179,000. And this statement adds back the capital and takes off depreciation. It's kind of an accounting, not a nightmare, but it's just how when we have to report to the province, we have to show things differently than you would report it on a cash basis, how you do your budget. So this statement shows how you come back to the surplus in our statement, the $1.2 million. I know that's a little confusing, but like I said, the main differences are the transfer to reserves, and we show depreciation of $2 million, where you show just what you actually spend. When you do your budgets on a cash basis. Things I might point out on the statements, page 4. Long-term receivables, we've talked about that. That's note 5. Sorry, that's the part. Long-term investments. There's a effective 2000. So that's when the shares were dealt with the utilities. Instead, I was wrong. That's 20 years ago almost. Note 8 talks about municipal debt. Tells the interest rate, how much is outstanding, the payments, when they're due. So the 624,000 that was used to buy grader a couple of years ago. The 83,000 that was for road work a couple of years ago. The 901,000 was for the Blythe Fire Hall and the ESTC. And then a couple of years ago, you did some upgrades at the West Cass Community Center, and that loan is 100,000. One thing that's interesting, and to kind of see where you stand, is the province limits how much you can spend on debt payments. So what they do is they take your revenue, they have a formula, and they take 25% of it. So in your case, the maximum you could spend on debt payments is 2.5 million. You're only spending 247 a year. So you're really only spending 10% of the maximum that the province would allow you to spend. So that shows that you don't have a lot of debt, and you're not spending a lot of your budget on debt, which is positive. And then the last schedule I might show is the schedule of reserves. It's one of the last pages. And we've talked about that quite a bit tonight. So you started with 10.2 million. You transferred into reserves. Some was planned, some was projects you didn't do, capital projects. Some was extra money. The county situation, their social and family services, 200,000. So you transferred in 2.4 million, and you spent 700,000. So at the end of the year, you had 12 million, 13,000. And you'll see under environmental services, that's mostly water and sewer, not all, but probably 95%. That 7 million of that is exclusively for that. And then we've talked about deferred revenue, and that's the federal gas tax fund. So at the end of last year, you had 223,000 you didn't spend. You received some interest on it. The federal government gave you 155,000 that you didn't spend. So now you had 383,000 at the end of 2018 that you can use for road work in 2019. And then there's the trusts. The main thing about trusts, they're just basically your cemeteries. So every time you sell a landfill lot, a percentage of that goes into a perpetuity fund. And that money, the interest on that money is set aside for the operations of the cemetery. It's not enough. Last year you transferred $66,000 of interest to help run the cemetery. It's a help. It's more of a something from long ago that the province set up that you have to do. So at the end of the year, the long and short is you have $500,000 in perpetuity fund, but you can't really touch it. It's the interest on that is used for to operate the cemeteries. There are some other parts of the municipality, the BIAs. So there's a Wingham and the Blythe business improvement areas. The first one might be Wingham. Just the balance sheet at the end of the year, they had $20,000 in the bank. They're down from 27,000, but they spent some extra money on some promotions. I think that's the main thing. Their surplus is 22,000. They do have 11,000 set aside for reserves. The income statement, main thing, of course, is the levies. They get some other income promotions, some membership fees, people who aren't a member of the BIA. So they took in 36,000. The main thing they spent on is advertising. The majority of that is media for downtown promotions. They did have a promotion called In It to Win. That was a big item. And then they do Main Street improvements. So they spent 29,000, and so they have a surplus of 3,200. The other BIAs in Blythe. So at the end of the year, they had $6,100 in the bank, down from 13,000. Just used more money. Accounts receivable, $7,000. That's unusual. They did get a grant from Regional Tourism, and half of that, they received $10,500. Half of it was outstanding at the end of December, but they did receive. So at the end of the day, they had a surplus of $2,600, down from $10,000, and that's explained on the income statement. The next page.
Can I ask you, if you don't mind, you said they had receivables of $7,000. Should we as a council be getting a breakdown of that just to see what's going on, or where that is kind of odd for a BIA?
Well, 5,000 of that is from Regional Tourism. So they would have received that right off the bat, probably in January, February. So that's the most of it. The other ones are probably just smaller ones, but they have a very detailed list. It's not hard to show that to you. But of the 7,000, 5,200 is from half a grant. And then we'll see on the other page, under income, Regional Tourism Organization grant. They were fortunate to receive that, 10,500. They did have a big promotion, hometown holiday. So they took in 30,000. Most of their work is promoting. They show the different things here: the Flower Me Project plaques, building Blythe's brand, the hometown holiday weekend. So they ended up spending a little more than they had, but I think that was mostly because of the hometown weekend. They planned for that. So they ended up with a surplus of 2,600. So I think in closing, it was a somewhat positive year that, you did end up being able to transfer in $1.7 million to reserves. You didn't do all your capital work, but you probably did 85% of it, and you're able to do that without taking on new debt. So that's all positive. Are there any questions?
So I'm just gonna throw a couple of questions. So with the money we put into reserves, Donna, did we show the reserves for the sale of the fire department in on that?
Well, that didn't happen though till January of 2019.
Okay. Questions or comments? Go ahead, Trevor.
But in saying that I would be used to seeing a subsequent note saying that property was temporary, it was scheduled for sale. Like by the time the report was finished, we all knew it was gonna be sold. So subsequent to year end, that property, that asset is sold. So I would have been used to seeing a subsequent year end note that says that, because again, if somebody was to read those, they're not gonna know by reading our statement that we actually sold that asset. And actually, we sold the asset in January, whatever, 3 days after the year end. So, it's a little different from a perspective from municipality, because we're reporting to the government, not necessarily a shareholder or anybody else, but I'm just used to seeing if we have a subsequent event that of a substantial nature, that we would have actually reported it on the financial statement somewhere, but we have not. So not that I don't think it changes the overall aspect of what the financial statements tells the government, but it just tells other readers of the financial statements that effectively that asset no longer, and we don't have that debt either as of the day of the report either. So that 900,000 technically.
Yeah,
we
no,
don't
that's
have that
a
debt.
very good point. And I guess the issue there is, we treat liabilities different than we do receivables. Like a liability, if you think there's a liability, you're supposed to make a note of it. A receivable, you never really, you wouldn't set it up till it actually happened. Would you write a note? You might. That's a good point.
Okay.
And you're right, it is substantial that then, you use that money and you pay down the debt and so forth.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I want to say that this is an example of a very good staff. It is our staff that got us here. This is the year before we came into being as a council. But this gives you an idea of the staff you're working with. I can't say it enough the last 6 months how happy I am to have the staff that surround me, and their attitudes are fantastic. You won't get a report like this if you've got a poor staff. So this was a very, very good report. I'm very pleased with it, and I'm sure I speak on for all of my council. Thank you to the staff members, right from the first guy to the last one. All of you did a great job to pull this off for us, and we hope we'll do it this year. Thank you very kindly. So I don't think I need a motion for that. But thank you very much. Paul, we appreciate that.
Well, thank you very much.
Okay, so we're going to now switch. We're going to go to the Committee of Adjustment.
Not often, I leave with more than I came with.
That the Council of Township of North Huron hereby adjourn the regular council meeting at 6:30 p.m. to enter into a Committee of Adjustment hearing. Do I have a mover? Trevor, seconder is Paul. All in favor? Carries. And that's the Council of Township of North Huron. Sorry. Oh, okay. So we're going to go here. So I'm going to call to order, because this is not on here at all. Is it? No. So I'm going to call to order. Do I have a mover? Sorry. Sorry, I'm just a little ahead of myself here. Disclosure of pecuniary interests. Seeing none, that the Committee of the Adjustment hereby accept the agenda for the June 17, 2019 hearing as presented. Now I'll ask for that motion, Rick. And Chris, all in favor? Carries. Okay, the Committee of Adjustment Authority. The Council of the Corporation of the Township of North Huron enacts bylaw number 110-2018 authorizing the appointment of a full council to form a committee of adjustment. Hence, it is by the authority of bylaw number 110-2018 that the Planning Act RSO 1990 as amended, and that the Committee of the Adjustment shall perform its responsibilities. Appointing a secretary, treasurer. The Council of the Corporation Township of North Huron hereby enacts bylaw number 110-2018 authorizing the appointment of the clerk as Committee of Adjustment secretary, treasurer. Statement of President that the decision reached by this committee tonight cannot be used to set precedent. New business, file number MB04-19, location 8374 8 Curry Line, Concession 3, Part Lot 40, East Wawanosh Ward, Township of North Huron. Applicants and owners are Henry Boss, Adria and Cornelia Boss, and forgive me if I said that wrong. And I'm gonna hand it over to Laura.
Good evening, council. Try sitting tonight in the middle of no podium. So this is the committee of adjustment hearing for minor variance application MV04-19 on concession 3, part lot 40 in East Waubnosh. So the purpose of this application is to seek relief from the North Huron zoning bylaw for specific provisions for the applicant who is proposing to construct a new livestock barn on the farm for finisher hogs located in the northwest corner of the property. The subject property is designated agriculture and natural environment limited protection in the North Huron official plan, and it is zoned AG1 general agriculture and NE2 natural environment limited protection in the zoning bylaw. The specific relief requested as part of this minor variance application is relief from the calculated minimum distance separation and from the required minimum distance for the exterior side yard as well as the rear yard. Specifically for the subject property, the relief requested as this application is that the rear yard requirement for the livestock barn is 30 meters and the applicant is requesting to build it a 15-meter setback. The exterior side yard requirement for a livestock barn is 60 meters and the applicant is proposing to build it a minimum setback of 45. And the minimum distance separation calculation distance, so that would be the distance for the new barn from the closest residence is 588 meters reduced down to 435. For the subject property, the rear property line is the north property line that abuts the neighboring farm to the north. And the exterior side yard is the property that runs along Curry Line. You can see here in the aerial photo of the property. So there's the property to the north, and that would constitute the rear yard, and the exterior side yard is Curry Line. Currently, as you can see, the subject property is vacant, no existing structures, and it's approximately 94.7 acres in size. So each minor variance application is reviewed against the applicable planning policies, as well as it must satisfy 4 tests. The first test is that the application meets the intent of the North Huron official plan. The subject lands are designated agriculture, and the proposed hog barn is a permitted use in the agricultural designation. And a goal in the agricultural section of the official plan is that farm operators are encouraged to engage in differing types of and intensities of agriculture and use best management practices. As well, the subject property is designated natural environment. Section 5344 of the natural environment section in the official plan does speak to development located adjacent to natural environment areas. It does recognize that development may occur in areas immediately adjacent to a natural environment feature. In this case, the subject property you can see running along the north, that's identified as a significant woodlot. But if the development is located within a certain proximity to the natural environment feature, there is the chance that a further assessment of the potential impact on the environmental feature could be required. In this case, because it is a significant woodlot, the area that would be buffered out from this feature is 50 meters, and the proposed barn is actually located outside of that buffer area with the reduced setbacks as part of this variance. So no further assessment was needed and no concerns were raised about a potential impact on the natural environment from the barn. So you can see here in this aerial for further clarification, this is the northwest corner of the property. You can see the yellow setbacks indicating the proposed 15 meters and 45 meters from the rear lot line and the exterior lot line. The red square is the approximate scale of the barn on the property, and the green there indicates that natural environment I was speaking to. That would have the area around it assessed for any potential impact. The second test that the application was reviewed against is if it meets the intent of the North Huron zoning bylaw. In the AG1 zone, agricultural buildings such as a livestock barn are permitted. The intent of the setbacks for these structures are to allow for site maneuverability and safe access. Reducing the exterior side yard from 60 to 45 meters does not affect the access or the functionality of the yard that would run along Curry Line. And reducing both these setbacks to the indicated 45 and 15 does not have an impact on the remainder of the property, and it would allow it to continue to be cropped. In the general provisions section of the zoning bylaw, it does require setbacks of buildings from municipal drains or water courses. The minimum setback from a water course or open ditch to a new livestock facility is 50 meters. So you can see there the drain is in the blue, and the blue on either side indicates that 50 meters. So the proposed livestock barn is outside of that minimum distance required by the zoning and set back from that drain on there. In section 4.5 of the AG1 zone section, it does require new livestock barns to meet a calculated minimum distance from neighboring houses and other considered sensitive land uses. Minimum distance separation is when a new livestock barn is proposed to be constructed in proximity to existing houses. It's a calculation that factors in the scale of the livestock barn, what type of livestock's in it, and how the manure is stored. And that calculates a set distance. In this case, the 588 meters was what was calculated, and the applicant is proposing to reduce that to a minimum of 435. And that's due to the spatial constraints of the property, the location of other houses in the area, and the buffering from both the drain and the natural environment, limiting where the barn could go. Is it desirable for the appropriate development of lands in question is the third test of the application. Locating the barn in this northwest corner does create the largest possible distance from the neighboring houses. So you can see in this aerial photo, the two closest houses to the proposed barn. So by reducing the setbacks to both the north and from Curry Line, it does push the barn farther away than if it were located further to the south. And it does keep it in that section of field that is cordoned off from the larger section that's being cropped because the drain that runs east and then north along the property. So it doesn't have an impact on the remainder of the fields. It makes an appropriate and efficient location for the ongoing agricultural use of the property, and again has that setback that satisfies from the drain and the natural environment. The farms to the north of the property do not currently have any existing residences on them, so they didn't have to factor into the minimum distance separation calculation, so that's to the north, further north along Curry Line. But it is important to consider future development in the agricultural area, and that would include the potential for a future house on those properties as well. So in reviewing this application, I reverse calculated that should this barn be constructed in this location, could the farms to the north build a house in the future? So they wouldn't be completely constrained if they wanted to add a house. And it did leave room on both farms to the north, on either side of Curry Line, that they could fit a house on the north half of their properties in the future for a future dwelling and any other structure. You can see here in the site photos, this is the approximate location. It's probably hard to see at this scale, but there are stakes in the ground showing, I assume that's the approximate location of the barn. So this is standing on Curry Line and looking towards where the barn would be built. And this is looking down south along Curry and the subject property towards the closest residence to the south. And that's the drain there that runs along the property to the east and then up to the north. The fourth and final test of the application is it minor in nature? So the approximate percentage for the relief sought for the minimum distance separation is approximately 26%. And the requested variances are considered minor in nature and appropriate given the scale of the property and the location of the proposed barn, as well as the other limiting factors, including neighboring residences and the drain and the natural environment. So with the conditions included in my report, I'm recommending approval of this application.
I don't recommend approval of the application.
Ma'am, I'll give you a chance to talk in a few minutes, okay? We have to follow rules, okay? Thank you. I would like to have comments from the applicant or his or her agent, the person that's doing this. Would they like to speak at this time?
I'm okay.
You're okay with it? Okay. Now, my dear, comments from others. You may state your name and what you'd like to say.
I'm Pat Brigham, and I live at 297 39724 Moncrief Road, right next to the place. That they're planning the stinking old pig barn. Anyway, I have been unsuccessful in arranging a legal counsel since I was only given a week to do that. And all the ones that I have contacted have done work for the county or the municipality with Huron County and have a conflict of interest on acting on my behalf. My concerns are many, not the least of which are the environment impact. We all know what happened in Walkerton several years ago. My concern is for my well water, my own health concerns, and that of my farm animals. I'm concerned that the applicant is building this barn far from his own living quarters and within provincial guidelines, but he's asking to build it closer to mine. I don't know why he doesn't build it next to his door so he can eat the shit instead of me. And the reason for this waiver and meeting, just how far it is from his house and just how close it is to mine. I'm really concerned about just how close and where I live, my house, where this 2,500 hog barn is to be built, while his property operates within the provincial guidelines. I'm concerned about the confinement pond for affluents for his hogs, and what will happen if it overflows, the contamination it will bring to my property and everybody in our area. I'm concerned that if and when the containment pond overflows and that other farms will be affected. I'm concerned that the applicant has chosen to take advantage of my relative inability to challenge this application, given the short time frame, my difficulty in finding suitable local legal counsel, given the conflict of interest issues, my personal unease for challenging this application.
Take your time, dear. Take your time. It's okay.
I am acting in my own behalf, but I plan on getting a lawyer involved. And if this goes through, I plan on suing the town council and Henry Boss and family if this goes through.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak? Go
Question.
ahead, Kev.
Through you, just for clarity of your property and adjacent to this property, do we have anything other than a map front? I take it's outside the 500 meter.
No, it's less.
Which property
Which
is it?
property is?
My property,
Is it the corner of Curry Moncrief?
yes.
So the one.
Where the,
The
where
one
the
that's
south
the largest
lane
square?
is?
closest
The
one.
largest square?
Yeah.
My question is, the other easement or small yellow square there on the, looks like it's part of the Curry line property. Is that a drain or what's? What's
The
up?
very small one,
Yeah.
that's Bell Canada.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a very small one, so.
But there is a drain. A drainage ditch that runs through there.
So we are actually at 7.5 Committee of Adjustment members, questions and comments. So further questions, comments? Chuck, did I see your hand up? Go ahead, Chris.
A couple of questions. Where is the manure tank? Where would it be located?
Under the building.
Just that, okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
It's under the building.
all right, that was one. And the minimum distance down to 435, when can you say it's too close? Like, where do you draw the line? How do you draw the line?
Well, there's not a hard number or percentage. That's why each one, as you heard in the opening statement, is not set to precedent. It would depend on the circumstances of the farm itself and what other factors in the area and how many houses it's being reduced from. In this case, the closest one would be that 435. So is there any other suitable space on the farm for a livestock barn to be located? In this case, there wouldn't be, given the natural environment of the drain and then for the residences to the east. It would depend on the scenario. There have been some recommending for approval greater than this and some less, or some it might not be comfortable with this because it might be asking for reduction from many residences or many other uses such as churches or schools in the rural area as well.
I guess the big thing is, can you stand by, I know you are, because you're approving this, but we can stand by that distance?
That's the Committee of Adjustments
Yeah.
consideration. So it is up for your consideration to take all comments presented, including mine. Mine are just comments submitted as the same as spoken in the meeting tonight.
Kevin?
Through you, Reeve. Do we have a description of of her property as far as what it is zoned as? I know we've had some come through the Committee of Adjustment where the applicants or the property owner's future ambitions were taken into consideration as if they were to have a couple of horses on a small piece of property or that kind of thing. The property that her property in the corner there, is it still registered as a farm property that they could put livestock on? She could put livestock on her property?
Yes, it would be the AG4, so that does permit livestock use as well. So the minimum distance separation is calculated from the house specifically. So it would be the actual distance from the edge of the residence, not the property or not other uses on the property, unless they were also considered sensitive. So if it was, for example, an Amish school and a residence, it would be measured from both those structures rather than just the property edge.
There's nothing prohibiting her from putting small amount of livestock on her property.
Right, that would still be a permitted use under that different zone, the AG4 zone, but the livestock would still be permitted there. If it was a new livestock facility of significant scale, then that structure would be measured from other neighboring properties, but not from the house on that same property.
So this isn't a kind of a being zoned residential, being right beside something that's agricultural, so they're both.
Right, they're both
Zone.
within that agricultural zone. It's the fact that the house itself is the structure being measured back from.
Okay.
Go ahead, Kevin, or sorry, Chris.
Sort of just a generalized question through you, Reeve, actually to the bosses. Have you spread manure on this farm? Like your cow manure on this farm before?
Yes,
Okay. No, what I'm getting at is it wouldn't be a new exercise.
it's not a new exercise. We spread manure there. We actually, right on the moment, because it's my father's farm, we actually spread a lot of the town's sludge on this farm, which would come to an end if this barn becomes a proposal, because then in my nutrient management plan, that doesn't fit anymore.
Yeah.
So yes, there has been liquid manure on here. In previous years, it has been the sludge from town on this farm. There has been chicken manure on this farm. There's been dairy manure on this farm. In previous years, while we dairy farmed, this isn't a new first time idea for this farm, no.
And of course, you work it in as quick as you can, or you're given X number of days, I guess, eh? Like you're standing by that as well.
No, not usually.
We'll just, ma'am, we'll just.
If it goes on,
That
on
depends,
alfalfa or something, I know it's a little different, but
that depends when the application is applied, yes. Because if it's on a planted crop, no,
No.
not working in.
no, of course not.
If it's not liquid manure, we do not work it in. But the sludge, that is part of the agreement while we do it. If it's on a standing crop, we don't. If it is on a non-standing crop, you have to do a little bit of minimum tillage to it is what they require.
I guess I'm just thinking of ways of you managing, when you do spread, managing it the best you can, so to reduce odors the best you can.
Yep.
See what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I get where you're coming from.
yeah, we have, a person that is definitely sensitive to it. I don't know, have you
It's okay.
complained before through the years?
Oh, yeah, I certainly have. And when we had company the one time, the young kid threw up right on his plate. It was so gross. It was absolutely terrible.
Yeah. we'll
So I'm
find
gonna,
this- face that
I'm
too.
gonna have to bring this back to the chair, okay?
All right.
Okay. Okay, so we've heard from comments. Anybody else would like to comment?
I'd just like to have a quick comment.
Oh, can I have your name, please?
It's Sandra Boss.
Thank you.
Several weeks prior to us approaching council, we did approach Pat. We let her know our intentions. She seemed in favor at the time, but as I had mentioned to Henry and my son, she might think about it, she might reconsider. Several weeks later, we did go back and discuss our intentions with her. We actually had a letter for her to sign. And she had said, Sandy, we've thought about it. I'm really not in favor. She was very concerned about the smell, very concerned about everything. Henry offered to buy a water kit to test the water. We did make it known to Pat that she has every right to say no to this application, but we are going to approach council, so she will get the letter to oppose and come to this meeting. So to say that she didn't have time really kind of personally hurts my feelings because we approached her several times and tried to be neighborly and have this discussion. The only comment that I would like to make is I've approached the previous council about promoting and supporting agricultural growth. I would like you to have an open, honest look at this for promoting and supporting agricultural growth. And I guess whichever way it goes, I would almost like a study on all the 100-acre properties or properties within North Huron. I'm not sure how many properties would actually be able to be built on, is my request.
Okay, thank you very kindly. So we've heard all the comments. We're gonna ask again one more time, Laura, can you give the recommendation of the Huron County Planning and Development Department?
I'm recommending approval of the minor variance application with the two conditions. They were that the barn is built within the sketches submitted in the application, and that there's 18-month time limit for the minor variance from committee's decision. That'll be 18 months to obtain the building permit, not just constructing.
Okay. Okay, we'll do the chair first. Is that what you're saying? Okay.
Sorry,
go ahead.
I just have a question about access to this farm. So the way I see it, there isn't, once that barn is, if that barn was to be built, there isn't access from the road currently to that. At least I couldn't tell where the access was. Would there a requirement for access to be requested? Whereabouts do they access that farm?
We access that farm actually really close to the open ditch right on the moment. But if we get approval to build this building, it would actually be on the north side of the two trees you see on Curry Line there.
So it'd be the where
It would be just past that is where, I can't think of his name, Sean?
Yeah.
So you would be requesting an access from Public Works in order to
Yes.
to access it closer to the barn?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody. Okay, so for the Committee of Adjustment,
there's a chart.
go to the chart.
Yes, so the chart is consideration of the effects, so you can do this, I guess it would be 4 decision. The remainder is it after, because it does have that they approve or deny. I guess there's the options of the effective public comments, which you heard here tonight. There were no public comments received during the circulation of the application. And the agency comments were that there were no concerns, and that included from North Huron staff and MBCA.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to read the motion out then, and or do you want to finish? We'll finish this. So Trevor, take over for ABCs.
Well, based on the fact that we have, so concerns were raised I guess it depends on, ultimately, I think we need to make the decision first based on this
I think so,
conversation.
actually.
Because again, there has been concerns raised.
Okay.
And then individually, we need to establish whether those concerns influenced our decision or not. That really is the intention of, it doesn't have to be unanimous. Whatever the decision is of council can be whatever. It's just this public consultation needs to be what we as an individuals believe either affected our decision or it did not. So that I think we need to make the decision first, Bree, in my mind.
So I don't have a recommendation on either my paperwork or my computer, so I'm gonna ask the clerk to. Someone has to, whether they want to approve it. Okay. Okay, do we have a motion to approve? Chris? Seconder. Kevin? Okay, we're gonna read it now.
That the Committee of Adjustment hereby recommends to North Huron Council that the minor variance application file number MV 04-2019 as it applies to 83748 Curry Line, Concession 3, Part Lot 40, East Wawanesh Ward, Township of North Huron. Applicant owners Henry Boss, Adri and Cornelia Boss be approved.
Questions and comments? Go ahead, Trevor.
I think that the one so I'm going back to the conversation about the concerns. And there's been some discussion about the applicants providing certain things to the concerned person, like a water sampling test. Like, are these things ongoing that you're suggesting, or just one time and then it would be like, I'm trying to understand if there's mitigation factors that you've suggested to the concerned resident in this sense, or is that something you've done just to the first before the applicant so that they know that their water is okay? I guess that's my concern, or my question. I guess not my concern.
I guess when we spoke, my understanding from her was that she had concerned about liquid manure, that she thought that the liquid manure in the neighborhood may be contaminating her well. I said, if it would put your mind at ease, I will buy a water kit test, actually have it at home. If that would put her mind at ease that the liquid manure that has been spread in our neighborhood is not contaminating her well, I would do that for her at this present time.
Okay, thank you.
I would recommend that a baseline is set regarding water, the person's water, and have a test being done before this happens. And at least then you know what the water sample is. That's a base. And then, pardon me, your name? Pat. Then Pat would know, it would put her at ease just knowing it could be bad already, and it wasn't because of your barn. And anyways, it'd be nice to know that. So I highly recommend that be done.
Okay, and that would be between neighbors and it's not part of the motion.
No.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Just a clarification for myself through your, the farmland adjacent to the front door of the property in concern, it's in farming progress as well, is it not? I mean, that the property right across the street is closer. It's being farmed.
On the other side of Curry Line.
Do we know what kind of farm that is?
So that would be this farm here.
We said that there are 4 other farms in direct contact within that property, within those same sightlines. Is there any problem with those other properties? I mean, so I should ask that maybe to Pat, is there any?
I know that Brumners were not happy with this at all.
No, I'm talking about your property. Do you have any concerns with the properties across the street? Or any other touching properties close to your?
Oh, no, it's just a big barn.
Okay, folks, I think we're getting into a situation where it's really nothing to do with council. The recommendation has been made. The motion is on the floor. So I'm going to call the motion. All in favor? Passes. Okay. Read all this. Okay, now Trevor, we're going to go to you, to your chart.
Well, I guess,
Appreciate your help.
This can be very difficult for a council to be unanimous in deciding what this is, because again, between me and the council, 4A and 5A could very easily be encompassing of what the decision has been made of council. So, I guess the question is, did the decision or did the concerns that were raised tonight influence the decision or the recommendation of the decision of council? And if it did, if anybody made a decision based on that the concerns did influence their decision, I think they got to voice it now, because then that would then influence which one we are. If it didn't influence the decision of council, then really it's 4A in my mind. But I guess I'm looking at council members, looking to see whether the decision, and you, Reeve, if the decision we've made was influenced by the concerns that were raised by the ratepayer here tonight.
So I'll start, then I'll say, no, it didn't influence me because it is farmland and it is farming. It's a different type of farm, but I believe still it is farming and that is farmland out there. Anybody else like to speak? Anybody have any influence? Okay. Not seeing any. So that would then be 5A or A number 5, and then effective agency comments on decision. There was no agency comments, or there was nothing that would have indicated they were received in support. So basically, I think it would be B3, which would be agency comments were received in support of the application. In effect, the result decision approved by application. Is that, I'm paraphrasing to make sure I'm looking at Laura to make sure that is what was actually received by you as the planner.
Yes, that's what was received, supportive comments from all the agencies and staff.
We're good with that, Laura?
Yeah.
So I would move that as to be A5 and B3 as the decisions affecting the comments for this committee of adjustments.
Thank you. Seconder? Chris, all in favor? Carries.
And Reeve, if there's us, like in the future, an issue or a split vote or anything like that on an application, this is just a guide to have some pre-wording. Definitely if council was divided on any application, off the book from this is fine to craft their own motion.
Okay, thank you. So this will help you now. The ruling of the Committee of Adjustment, minor variance procedure following public meeting. The Secretary Treasurer sends within 10 days a certified copy of the decision indicating the last day of the appealing to the Local Planning Appealing Tribunal, LPAT. 2, the applicant, the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing if requested, each person who appeared in person or by counsel as a hearing and who filed with the Secretary Treasurer a written request for notice of decision. If no appeal lodged after the 20-day objection period has expired and no appeal has been lodged, the decision of the Committee of Adjustment is final and binding. The Secretary Treasurer shall notify the applicant. If a notice of appeal is lodged within 20 days of the Committee of Adjustment making decisions, the appeal is lodged with the Secretary Treasurer outlining the reasons for such an appeal, and the said appeal is accompanied by the required fee of $300 for the Committee of Adjustment to no longer retains jurisdiction over the applicant. If a proper appeal is lodged, the Secretary Treasurer is required to provide proper notice to the Legal Planning Application Tribunal. Okay, having said that, if there are no further business before the Committee of Adjustment, the public hearing therefore adjourns at 7:05 p.m. Do I have a mover? Rick, do I have a seconder? Kevin, all in favor? Passes. Okay, now we're gonna go that the Council of Township of North Huron reconvenes the regular council meeting at 7:05 PM. Now we have that the Council of Township of North, oh, sorry, guys, getting ahead of myself. Do I have a mover? Trevor, do I have a seconder? Rick, all in favor? Passes. That the Council of Township of North Huron hereby accepts the resolution of the Committee of Adjustment and that the minor variance file number MV04-2019 as it applies to 83748 Curry Line Concession 3, Park Lot 40, East Wawanosh Ward, Township of North Huron. Application owners Henry Boss, Andrea and Cornelia Boss be approved with the conditions set out by the Huron County Planning and Development Report presented by Laura Simpson on the June 27, 2019 meeting. Do I have a mover? Kevin, do I have a seconder? Chris, all in favor? Carries. Thank you. Okay, we're going to go down to reports now. And we're going to have 7.1.1. It's going to be the housekeeping amendment to North Huron zoning bylaw. I'm going to read the motion first, then we're going to have conversations, and I believe Sean's going to want to speak to this. That the Township of North Huron directs the planner Laura Simpson to begin the process to undertake a housekeeping amendment to the North Huron zoning bylaw to update and clarify zoning provisions and brings the zoning bylaw into conformity with North Huron bylaws and provincial updates. Do I have a mover? Kevin, do I have a seconder? Paul? Okay. Laura's going to speak to this one.
Yes, so this is what's called a housekeeping amendment to the North Huron zoning bylaw. So this would be an update conducted to the North Huron zoning bylaw to bring it into conformity with some provincial updates that have happened, some of the North Huron bylaws and some of the Huron County bylaws, as well as updating the necessary provisions for the general section, specific zones, permitted uses, and some definitions. So the zoning bylaw is required to have an official cover-to-cover update every 5 years. This is a smaller scale of that. It's not on the scheduled timeline right now to have a full-blown 5-year review, but housekeeping amendments are done time to time to ensure that the document is updated for clarity, for relevant information and provincial updates as well, and to administer grammatical and administrative updates as well. So through this motion of directing me to begin this housekeeping amendment, I would begin by reviewing the necessary sections, conducting a staff review as well, if there's any sections of the North Huron zoning bylaw that any North Huron staff believe should have a look at, and also advertising. So it is a requirement to advertise since it would be affecting some of the general sections of the zoning bylaw, which would impact everywhere in the municipality. Should their property be applicable, then it would be advertised in the paper for the public meeting. So this wouldn't be an update that would change any of the mapping. It's strictly a text exercise, and it wouldn't be specific property changes to the zones. So it wouldn't be any one specific property having their zone change without being notified as part of this. So specific changes for this would be clarification to the commercial zones for the location of permitted residential uses, additions in relation to the Cannabis Control Act, clarification to permitted structures and uses in the natural environment zone, amendment to the AG4 agricultural small holding zone, and amendment to the general provisions parking section to bring it in conformity with North Huron and Huron County bylaws, amendment to building or unit size requirements in the residential zones, and then general minor grammatical or administrative updates. So some of the topics that would require further discussion with council for your consideration will be brought back on a topic by topic consideration to allow for a more in-depth discussion before the full housekeeping amendment was brought back for your consideration, because I think there's some topics that I would like to get council's input from, as well. The public meeting would also be the opportunity for public input.
Okay, questions or comments? Seeing none, do I have a mover? Oh, sorry. All in favor? Carries. 7.1.2, North Huron Fire and Public Works, a site plan. That the Council Township of North Huron hereby approve the proposed site plan for the development of the North Huron Fire Hall and Public Works Garage and subject lands. Do I have a mover? Chris, do I have a seconder? Rick? Okay. Fire guy. Laura again?
Yes,
Boy,
but this one.
Just
you
on
can
a
feel free-
roll.
Can feel free to ask Sean some questions as well.
All
since,
right.
He knows this. So this is for council's consideration of a site plan in Blythe. And it is for the site plan for the proposed municipal development of the new North Huron Fire Hall and the Public Works Garage. So North Huron acquired the vacant land in the north end of Blythe, the subject property, in 2019 after constructed the new Public Works facility and fire hall after the sale of the former Emergency Training Services and Training Center in 2018. The site plan proposes to construct a new shared use building for both the North Huron Fire Department and the North Huron Public Works Department and house the necessary equipment, material, and personnel for each department's operations. Items for consideration for the site plan were parking, access from Queen Street, building layout, and stormwater management. So currently the subject property is vacant and has had farm use on it, like being cropped previously, and it fronts and accesses onto Queen Street, which is county road at that point. And the drawings that were reviewed and submitted were reviewed by the Huron County Public Works Planning and North Huron staff as well. So the property is zoned and designated highway commercial in the official plan and North Huron zoning bylaw. The proposed uses for the building include a fire hall, offices, and public building, which are all permitted in the C3 zone. So you can see on the aerial here the subject property and how it fronts onto Queen Street there. So this is the proposed site plan. So you can see the two entrances that would be coming out onto Queen Street. The proposed site plan complies with the provisions of the North Huron zoning bylaw and the C3 zone concerning the applicable lot setbacks, lot coverage, building setbacks, landscape open space, parking requirements, and driveway provisions. The site plan proposes the building be used as with drive-through bays and requires enough spatial flexibility around the building to accommodate equipment and truck turning movements. There may be future design considerations for the proposed entrances onto Queen Street, but that would be at the county's approval since they would be issuing the entrance permits. The drawings were reviewed and comments received from North Huron County staff concerning parking spaces, landscaped open space, and the entrances were addressed through revised drawings and conversation with the engineer from BM Ross. And after review and discussion with North Huron and BM Ross engineering staff, Huron County Public Works has approved and issued revised entrance permits for the proposed driveways onto Queen Street. So this is the site plan you can see of the building. And then this is some street view of the existing site. And this is the proposed building layout. So on the south half of the property there, you would have the fire hall, and the north half would be where the 3 bays for public works, sorry, 3 for public works? 2, sorry, that's reversed. 2 is the public works, 3 is on the north for the fire hall with meetings, meeting rooms, offices, and training area in the center, and then as well as second store that would have mezzanine and storage areas. And this would be the view from Queen Street, the proposed elevations for it. So council's motion tonight is to approve the site plan as presented, and the site plan agreement would be the subject of a bylaw that we brought back for council's consideration. So the site plan agreement itself would address specific issues relevant to the site and any future design on it.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, Sean, did you or did the fire chief want to talk to it? You
I
good?
don't believe there's anything more to add at this point. Rick.
Okay, in that case, I call the motion. All in favor? Carries.
Thanks.
Thank you. We're going to go to 7.1.3, and that will be traffic bylaw amendments. Again, I'll read the motion and we'll have a talk. That the Council of Township of North Huron hereby receive a report from the clerk dated June 17, 2019 regarding traffic bylaw amendments for information purposes. And further, the council direct the clerk to prepare a bylaw to adopt the amendments to Schedule K of bylaw number 39-2012 for the July 2nd, 2019 council meeting. Do I have a mover? Paul, do I have a seconder? Chris, who would like to speak to this one? Okay, the clerk is going to speak to this one. Laura's off.
Thank you, Your Worship. So basically, the traffic bylaw must reflect all items that exist in the field, such as the locations of traffic signage and community safety zones. And so when these changes are made in the field, the traffic bylaw needs to be amended. So this report is just requesting that the amendments be made to the field. And those amendments that are proposed to be in Schedule K is dealing with the stop sign locations. So since the bylaw was last amended, there's been 4 stop signs added at Alfred Street and Francis Street, at Francis Street and Alfred Street on the southwest corner and the southeast corner, at Moore Court and Carling Terrace at the southeast corner, and also at Manor Road and Summit Drive.
Questions or comments? Go ahead, Trevor.
My only comment would be, I think all the places where the stop sign locations were put, I think are a great place to put them. I have no issues about where they've placed them. My only concern is that these stop signs have been placed, and now we're asking for the bylaw to be amended. So if in essence, if anybody had done anything with those stop signs, there could be no fine provided, because there's no bylaw saying there would be a sign there. So I looking at the future considerations, I would agree that, a yearly review to make sure if there is issues with certain places within the municipality in regards to stop signs or whatever the case may be, that those comments to be suggested should come to council with a recommendation, and therefore a bylaw amendment, then signs being put up, not the other way around. I understand why they were done. I completely agree with them. However, the idea of doing something first and then asking for permission later doesn't seem appropriate in a transparent government. So I think from my perspective, I think if we could do it that way, that would just make it a little more cleaner from a perspective of enforcement, because we can't enforce it unless the bylaw is enforced. So right now, I think that once we get this bylaw enforced, we're good.
I'm going to speak to that because it was not the staff that had that done. It was your Reeve. And again, I agree with Trevor. I may have made a mistake here, and I apologize. But we'd looked into some of these signs beforehand and in between the time, and then it went on a bit, and we were looking at them, and then there was a serious accident the other end of town, and I had a phone call, lady saying, "Well, now what are you going to do about it?" So it was your Reeve that asked the staff, not the staff that took the initiative and do things on their own. So I will ask for forgiveness on this one, and I'm not sure how it was done in previous times, but we will move forward from that. Any other questions or comments? Yeah, go ahead.
This reevaluation of the stop signs in the day, was that just done in just the Wingham one?
It was complaints coming in. It was complaints and accidents coming in. So it was pretty well pushed forward by accidents. Anybody that wants to have something looked at, though, should give the CAO a call, have a conversation with them, and we'll move it forward, because it does look as if it was only Wingham, but it just so happens that that's where the complaints and the accidents came in from.
It's just, the optics looks.
Oh, absolutely.
Look bad we've had great accidents at 4 and 25.
Yeah.
And nothing. We're waiting on someone else to make a decision where if we had the ability to make our own, we would have made them by now.
We're moving on that one too. Sean, do you have anything to add to that?
No, thank you, Your Worship.
Okay. So, yeah, again, Blythe, Reese, Wawanash, the signs you want went up. Please have somebody just talk to your local counselor or have them bring it forward, and we'll take care of it. So, having said that, I'm the bad guy, really bad now. No, anyway, all in favor? Carries. Thank you. We'll go to the finance department next. and it's going to be 7.2.1, 2018 audit financial statements. I'm going to read the motion first again, that the Council Township of North Huron hereby receive the 2018 audited financial statements for the Township of North Huron, Wingham BIA, and Blythe BIA as presented by Seabach and Company. Do I have a mover? Kevin, do I have a seconder? Paul, Donna, did you want to talk to this one?
I don't think so unless there was any further questions from the auditor's presentation.
Any questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, I call the vote. Passes. Recreation has no report. Public Works and Facilities, we do. It looks like 7.4.1. I'll read the motion that the Council Township of North Huron hereby receive the report of the Director of Public Works dated June 17, 2019 regarding the outcome of the Carling Terrace Road reconstruction tender for information, and further that the staff be authorized to commission the completion design and engineering for a full road reconstruction from Cowan Street to Victoria Street, and further that the Director of Finance be authorized to transfer project funds totaling $571,000 to the Roads Reserve Fund for the completion of the road work on Carling Terrace from Diagonal Road to Victoria Street East. Do I have a mover? Paul and Trevor. Sean, would you like to talk to this one?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Okay, so as the council's aware, Carling Terrace was identified as our number one priority for reconstruction during 2019 budget discussions, and council did actually give staff pre-budget approval at the January 15th meeting of the review budget. Design drawings were completed in May, at which time the tender was released. Tender actually closed Monday, June 10th. And because of the timeline, it generated very limited response with only one bidder submitting a proposal. What we found when we opened the tender, we had a total of $663,000 budgeted. Sole bid that we received was $1,376,340. So there's a number of factors. I mean, obviously staff looked at this and we wanted to really get to the bottom of why we would have seen such an unfavorable response. We come up with three reasons that we believe would have contributed. We did get pre-budget approval in January, but at that point we were starting at ground zero. So we had to have all the detailed design and tendering work done. So by the time you get all that done, you're pretty late in the year, as you can see by the June 10th closing date. So I think a lot of the firms that would have been interested in this size of job have already filled their schedule for the summer. One of the things we did find, because we were starting from a concept, was that when we got into the field, there was some increase in scope. One of the things in particular that was noted, there was some additional storm work that we found was necessary to clean up that corner of Corner and Carling Terrace. And BM Ross, in their engineering review, determined that we should be going from an 8-inch to a 10-inch water main to increase water flow in that particular area. So these are the kind of things that contribute to the increase in the scope itself. And then the other thing we will have to consider as we move forward is we looked at this from the perspective of a like-for-like replacement. So 2 sidewalks, paved boulevards, we engineered or have engineered the same. You know, and we may want to, based on fiscal constraint, we may want to look at a more simplistic urban cross-section as we have in our development guideline, which might indicate, you know, grass boulevards and one sidewalk, which would definitely help control costs as we move forward. So that's something we'll look at in the future. And then to really wrap this up for council and put it in perspective, the original calculations that we used to put the project costing in front of the budget committee were based on $3,000 per meter for full road reconstruction. We believe that number to be a fair one. We did, after this closed, we did a bit of a comparison, look at a neighboring municipality that just did a fairly big job, and their pricing came in at between 2,500 and 2,700 per meter. So I think the 3,000 that we used was a good number. When we analyzed this submission, it came in at $3,900 per meter. So that's why you see the recommendation from staff that you see in front of you. So, and basically, just to wrap this up, despite the fact that the price was high, BM Ross still did a full tender submission. No bid irregularities were identified, which would prevent council from awarding the contract. And as I've already noted, the bid for this project was over double what we had budgeted. For that reason, staff's recommending that the submission be rejected, and the suggestion moving forward would be that we would carry those funds in reserve. I'm looking for budget or approval of council to go and finish the engineering for the top portion of that stretch. So basically from Cornyn up to Victoria. Then I'm sitting with a shovel-ready project. I go for pre-budget approval in 2020, and if all things are aligned, North Huron could be one of the first out with fully engineered drawings and a tender package. And I think at that point, we could start looking to see, or hoping to see that $3,000 or less per meter. But that's the proposed approach here.
Thank you very much. Questions or comments? Go ahead, Trevor.
Through you, Reeve, so I guess my comment would be based on what I've heard from you, from Sean, and is we're better off to get shovel-ready engineering and design in the year in which we're running, to get pre-budget approval for the next year in January, so that we're on the first of the game, as opposed to getting pre-budget approval, doing the engineering, it takes 3 or 4 months, and then we're behind the ball. Is that what I'm hearing, Sean?
Through you, Reeve, precisely. If we have shovel-ready projects waiting, we can be the first to the mark and we get everybody's attention.
And I'll add to that too, in the fact that if we have shovel-ready projects and there's any upper tier government money coming out, it's usually shovel-ready they want, so they can say, we created the jobs this year. So to have shovel-ready, to spend the engineering money and have the shovel-ready projects ready to go, it's a bonus for all of us, because then when something does drop in our lap, we can become part of it. Where if we're not ready, it just goes right over and past us. You were gonna.
Yeah, I guess the follow-up to that is, do we have, based on our 5-year, 10-year projection, Sean, for road reconstruction, do we have a perspective of how do we get that shovel-ready land in time to get every pre-budget approval in time? I don't know that in 2018 we have any design engineering work budgeted for roads that we're going to be doing in 2020.
Yes, actually, through you, Reeve. And this is something I want to bring forward to council in much more detail as we get closer to the next year's budget process. But Donna and I have had opportunity to talk about this thing. We know that projects are costing more. We know that funds are limited. And we're almost thinking that a good approach will be engineering year 1, construction year 2. And then once you do that once, then as you're constructing, you're engineering for the following. So you get into that state where you perpetually are both doing some construction and preparing for that shovel-ready design for the following year. So it's the first thing, though, I think I need to really tighten up, roll all of the Blythe and wing and priority stuff that I've got from BM Ross together, get it in front of council and discuss that whole methodology.
So what I'm hearing, Sean, then is we have a full proposal for Carling Terrace. We're constructing Carling Terrace, and then in the meantime, in 2020, we're also designing and engineering another section of road, whether it be in East Wallinosh or Blythe or wherever, in order to have construction in 2021. Is that what I'm hearing?
Through you, if the funds will support it, yes, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Sounds like a good plan.
Then I call the motion, all in favor? Passes. Okay, 7.5 is the fire department. We're gonna go 2019 for the EST burn training. And again, I will read the motion first. That the Council of Township of North Huron hereby receive the report from the Fire Chief of North Huron dated June 17th, 2019 regarding the removal of the ESTC burning training equipment. And further, that the council authorizes use of the sole source purchase method regarding the removal of the ESTC burn training equipment. And further, that the council award approval to the burn equipment from the containers at a cost of $6,000 to Pro Safe Fire Training Systems. Do I have a mover?
Move.
Trevor, seconder. Paul, would you like to speak to this, sir?
Yes, thank you, Reed. I did ask Deputy Chief Chad Krieger and Deputy Chief Matt Townsend to join me, just in case there was any questions. Those guys are familiar with that equipment, much more familiar than what I am. We did get an actual price quote from ProSafe, and it is $6,300 plus the total, plus HST. Everything else was covered in my report.
I'll amend the motion to 6,300.
And Paul, will you accept that? Thank you. Any other questions or comments for either the fire chief or the fire deputies that are here today? Go ahead, Kevin.
Through you, Reed. To either the deputy chiefs or the chiefs. That proposal, that's just to remove the equipment right now, or is that have anything
That's
to do with where they're going?
strictly just to remove it from where it is now.
Any request put forward through you guys to ascertain what it would cost to reinstall?
No, we didn't go that far just yet.
Jeff from ProSafe said it would approximately be about the same price, depending on what they can salvage.
Yeah.
Starters, just get it out.
My only, through you again, Reed, my own concern is that the moment it's removed, it's going to have to go somewhere. And if there's a plan in place to where it could go, it could maybe move once. Instead of move it 3 times, well, they're trying to decide where to put it.
So just, I'm gonna throw the question out there, then I thought we were moving it from the location now to a location where you will eventually use it, or we're just storing it there for now?
Well, these are electronic components that there's nowhere to store it there yet.
Oh, okay.
Basically, the equipment they're moving is the control panel that is the brains of the whole operation, as well as the one flashover unit, which is a simulator. They're fired by propane, but they're electronically controlled. So they would obviously have to be out of the elements.
Mm-hmm. So you have a place that's gonna be out of the elements for them, huh?
The wall of the fire hall right now.
Yeah.
Against the wall.
There is a couple of storage containers that I'm sure there's one storage container that is usable, full of stuff, of the STCs, and as well as the Blythe Firefighter Association also have one. There may be room in there. I'm not sure. Check with them.
Go ahead, Kevin.
I was just gonna follow up through your, the project as a whole, I'm just a person concerned about these little ones adding up all the way along I think we already have a plan, or already had a decision made of that we're going to be moved. That we can direct staff to ascertain the location costs of moving them and get a project idea in mind rather than just keep. I realize that the ProSafe, that these things have to be removed, and that's it. But I would much rather have as a council, have an idea of what the cost of moving everything and actually know where they were going to go, what they were going to do. We're just seem to, as John noted earlier, we're kind of behind the ball on this project as well. We should have an idea, or at least formulation into what's going to happen with them.
And given the time restraints and the headaches we've had getting as far as we have. So to what Kevin said, can we do that? Can you guys bring a plan forward saying, okay, we know we've got them stored here?
So once this equipment is removed, then we will have to inspect the containers that are on site now to see if they're usable. And then we'll determine whether, a plan going forward from that. But yes, we certainly put together a plan on, once we get more details and once we know what conditions stuff is in it.
So Kev, is that
We
good?
will come to council with a full report at that time.
Does that answer your question, Kevin, or still concerned?
No, I understand their timeline, and then that they have to remove these props to comply with the sale of the property. Yeah, I would just like to see this formulation going forward rather. I just don't want to see the equipment sit on the fire hall wall for 10 years when the promise was made to.
I see where you're going now. Yeah, so this is make sure we're gonna use it down the road. Okay, I see where you're going now. So we can do that, gentlemen?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you very kindly. So, any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I call the motion. All in favor? Passes. Now we're gonna go to the building department and the building inspector appointment. And again, I'll read the motion first. That the Council of Township of North Huron hereby receives a report from the fire building official dated June 17, 2019 regarding the update of the building inspector's qualifications. And further that the council appoint Garrett Cleghorn as the building inspector for the Township of North Huron. And further that the council deems the appointment to be an administrative matter and grants the exception to section 19.1 of the procedural bylaw, allowing bylaw 59-2019 to be adopted at the June 17th, 2019 council meeting, and we will adjust that little number there, folks. Do I have a mover? Paul, do I have a seconder? Rick? Questions or comments? Go ahead, Chris.
I wonder why that it's not mentioned that this person is part of a shared service. It's not complete to me.
It's in the description.
Yeah, I know it is, but it's not in the motion. That it's a shared service. Like, is that important? It is to me.
I can
Yes.
answer that for you.
Yeah.
It is a shared service, building department. Garrett is an employee of Morris Turnberry Building Department. And in order for Garrett to do inspections in North Huron, he has to be appointed as a building inspector for North Huron. So, right, I think that would address your question.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Go ahead, Kevin.
It's more of a comment through you, Reeve. All of the shared services that I've seen on council come through, every one of them's been an employee of Morris Turnberry, and we use them as a shared services. Is there an explanation of why it goes that way and not the other way where we're selling services to other?
I think, I'll answer then I'll go to Trevor. I think that's going to be a part of our discussion, I believe, second council meeting in July. Yeah, I would like to have everything lined up and ready, and we're gonna have a discussion about that and then have a further discussion with Morris Turnberry about which direction we're all going in and how we're getting there. But yes, I hear what you're saying. Yeah. Go ahead, Trevor.
So a little bit of a background. So when shared services was designed as a Morris Turnberry, North Huron, completely 45, 55, whatever the split is, discussion. It was not, it was an administrative nightmare in a sense of there wasn't one municipality calculating all the costs and then selling it to the other municipality. What it was the cost would come in and they'd split it. And it was, for all intents and purposes, a disaster from an accounting perspective for both every department, public works, building, as well as administration and finance. And I'm looking at Kurt and Donna, and they're shaking their head because they would probably agree with me that it was a disaster. The intention at the time of when the building department went back to, was a municipality of Morris Turnberry operated service and then billing us, was there was more employees for Morris Turnberry because Kirk was actually an employee of Morris Turnberry at the time. And we only had one building official at the time, which was Jamie, I can't remember his last name, Bell. So when he resigned, there was no employees of North Huron in the building department, in essence. So the purposes of that was there was one in Morris Turner, Kirk was Morris Turnberry, as well as Steve. So there was 2 municipality employees in Morris Turnberry, 1 employee of North Huron, and then also the discussion was we added Howick in there as well. So in 2018, there's a lot of moving pieces to this puzzle. But when we talked about, when council did this, the previous council did the conversation about the shared services, that was one of the discussions that when Public Works Shared Services disbanded, a lot of the discussion from Kirk and the other ones was it would be so much easier if we put everything in one municipality and then build the service accordingly, as opposed to doing this mismatch of trying to allocate costs when they come in as wholes. So I don't think there was any purpose to it other than to make it simplified for the administration of the actual department, in the sense that Morris Turnberry, the chief building official is a Morris Turnberry employee. It just seemed right that it would be a Morris Turnberry service and they bill us. The costs are the same either way. The cost hasn't changed. It's actually been a more favorable allocation than we had been in the past, because it was used to be 55-45 or some type of arrangement, and now it's 50-50, the way I understand.
Hard costs are 50-50 expenses, but as far as my salary, it's 60-40. So North Huron pays 40%, Morris Turnberry pays 60%.
So that's a little bit of the history about what, in all honesty, I will tell you, there was lots of discussions during the shared service that North Huron should have it all and then just bill at Morris Turnberry. A lot of those conversations happened behind the scenes, and this is what council determined at the time. And from administration purposes, that was the reason for the change at the time when the shared services arrangement between Public Works and the building department kind of more of the Public Works one when it disbanded, and they thought administratively that it would be a whole lot better to do it from a one perspective side and then just bill North Huron as needed.
Just a continuation of that, just for the optics of it, of every time North Huron needs services of a professional, and it's for lack of a better word, farmed out to another municipality to provide that for us. If it's more economical to do it that way, that just leaves the door open for doing all of our services that way. And all of it. We're duplicating everything, and it just gives me a bad feeling when we're farming in, we're bringing in people from, not that it's advantageous, but if it's that advantageous, maybe we should expand that envelope. And I just don't know where to stop and where, what's feasible and what isn't. So it just gives myself a shiver up my spine.
We'll have a good look at that shortly. Chris, go ahead.
Your shiver, is it because it's happening, because we are doing a shared service right now, or
no,
I
but
didn't quite get that.
Oh, sorry. If I'm able to buy services from you at a favorable cost to me that I couldn't provide for myself, then what am I doing here? If I'm the one that's directing all these services to be done, and it's being done more cost effectively outside of my hands.
By sharing.
Yeah, by sharing.
This is a good exercise, sharing this department, because it's working, right?
Certainly is.
When you're needed in North Huron, you make an appointment and you're there, right?
But we have an individual, an out staff member that does all the scheduling for the inspections. So it's, that's working very well too. Nobody has to wait for a return phone call when they're calling the office, right? It can get handled right away and the inspection is booked. The nice thing about a shared service too is you're consistent in both municipalities. And I've always heard that it might not be the same over in South Bruce or here in Kinloss as it is in this municipality, so you get consistency. And you're dealing with contractors that work in both areas as well, so their expectation would be the same when you're in both municipalities as well, regardless of where they're working, right? So I feel it's working great. That's my opinion.
I guess to explain myself further is this, then why do we own a plow? Why do we own sanders when we can let the other municipality cover all the costs of all that and we just buy a service?
I see.
It cuts down on our having to buy
But
something.
this is the start, and it's working, and then it's something that we just keep our eyes open, and where else can we share? But that's something that we just need to slowly work upon, and
All I was saying earlier with the office is that it looks like we can't do that for ourselves. That we have to buy the services from another municipality. That's all I'm getting at.
I'm gonna allow Trevor, the guy that sat on the last council, to talk to this one, because if I recall, it had its good points and it had its really bad points.
Yeah, so ultimately, the intention of shared services is, this was a Huron County directive back in 2015. Huron County put a big push because it was a provincial mandated discussion about how do we cut costs? How do we cut administration? How do we cut services or cut the ability to have costs more efficient with still having the same level of service that we're providing? So shared services, the whole arrangement of shared services was that intention. It was an intention of Public Works and building official because we had conversations about, we're having the same people do the same levels of stuff in both municipalities. There was discussions about plow routes and a whole bunch of other stuff in Public Works. So it didn't work for a number of other reasons. I'm not suggesting it couldn't work from a new, fresh outlook from a different council and a different administration. I don't know a lot of there seemed to be a lot of things working in the background that it had its demons, and I think those can be worked out. I don't know why it became such a heartache as it was, but what I'm hearing is, Councillor, we could not afford a building official for the amount of work that we have. Have a full-time building official as well as another full-time staff to have 2 people. It's more cost-effective for us to have it the way we have it today than it would have been to have a full chief building official as well as another inspector. The service would not be available, in my mind, to the same level of service that we're giving today, based on how the workload is shared. In saying that, shared services is not here to go away. We should be looking at it constantly. Administration should be looking at it constantly. The discussion has always been shared services leads to one thing: amalgamation. Let's be clear. Everybody believes that is the possibility, or that is the anticipation. It doesn't necessarily have to go that way, but people think that's what the impression is. Amalgamation doesn't always mean it's the best. Shared services, if you have a proper arrangement, can work just as well. But you have to have the framework involved and the people in administration and the staff that are willing to work together and not worry about boundaries. And that's the part where we have to talk about. I think Morris Turnberry and North Huron and everybody needs to get on the same page with what we want from our people and our municipalities, and so that we can all grow together. We're all here for the same purpose, to serve our ratepayers in the best efficiency possible. So, your comment of should we be servicing or should we be buying from everybody else? Maybe. Maybe we should be offering it to everybody else. That's a possibility. But these are all conversations that we have to have with our partners in other municipalities to know where we all stand so that we can actually have a meaningful conversation about shared services. This council's way is brand new, and that council's brand new. There's no reason why that discussion can't start again. It's just a matter of what does it mean to each other, and that's, I think, the Reeve has talked about. We're going to have some meetings about other things with Morris Turnberry. There should be nothing off the table in my mind, but that's just me. That's my opinion to council. I don't think anything should be off the table because, again, we're all new. We're all here for the same reasons.
Amalgamation, eh? Anyway, back to our subject here. Is this you, Mr. Cleghorn?
Yep.
It was very nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming out today. And right now, let's see if you have a job. I call the motion. All in favor? You have a job. Thank you very much for coming out tonight. It was nice to meet you.
He had a job before,
yeah.
just whether he was going to do it in North Huron.
There you go. Amalgamation or no amalgamation. Oh, yay. Welcome to North Huron.
I'm in Morris Turnberry.
7.6.2, proposed clean yard bylaw report. Motion is that the Council Township of North Huron hereby receives a report of the chief building official dated June 17, 2019 regarding a clean yards policy for information purposes. And further, the council deems it necessary to adopt bylaw 60-2019, being a bylaw to establish a clean yards policy. And further, that council deems the establishment of a clean yards policy to be time-sensitive matter and grants the exception to section 19.1 with the township's procedural bylaw to allow bylaw 60-2019 to be adopted at the June 17th, 2019 council meeting. Do I have a mover? Rick moves, Paul seconds. Would you like to speak to this, Sean? Going this way? Going that way?
It's Kirk's report.
Oh, Kirk, sorry.
Yes, I can speak to it. Good evening, council. Our current yard maintenance bylaw is very limited on the items that we can look at. The definitions are very vague. So we've discussed it internally with our bylaw enforcement officer, Bruce Brocklebank. This is the bylaw that's been brought back. You can see it's fairly lengthy, but it does deal with a lot of areas in it within which our current bylaw does not. Both bylaws allow the same amount of time, so we would provide the owner 72 hours. And I'm going to use grass as an example. Okay, so if we receive the complaint, we would go take a look at it. If it's not in compliance with the clean yards bylaw, Bruce would issue an order, and it would be 72 hours, and then we would allow that owner to cut the grass, and if not, then we can go in and do it, and we can charge it back to the owner's taxes. We can hire somebody to get it done, same thing. The height of the grass has changed. We brought it down from 8 inches to 6 inches in the bylaw. The old bylaw really dealt with only grass, noxious weeds, and derelict vehicles. And again, the new policy deals with a lot more. It's certainly an enhanced bylaw from the last one. If there's some items that we have to deal with that aren't in this bylaw, we have to use the property standards bylaw. When we use that bylaw, we have to allow a reasonable amount of time for the individual to look after that. It could be 2 weeks. If that individual appeals it, you're allowed 14 days for an appeal. So you can see your timeline is getting out to 1 month before you can really do anything if you want to do anything on the property. This is going to address it to within 72 hours. Keeping in mind, we're not driving around looking for properties that look like this or that would be contravening the bylaw. It's strictly on a complaint basis. So we want a public complaint form filled out, submitted, signed, and dated before we will address anything with Clean Yards bylaw.
Questions or comments? Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned, this is going pretty far. Going far, but the nuisance aspect of it, like, I don't like Joe Blow and, oh boy, his grass is long, I'm gonna make a complaint. Like, we wanna kind of prevent that if we can. And, I've always thought that if you're gonna be bound and determined to make a complaint, your property better be darn good. I know we can't make that happen, but that's how I feel. But it's the nuisance aspect that's probably concerning the most.
And when you say nuisance, is it like two neighbors because they
Yeah.
can't talk? Okay.
Yep.
And we deal with that all the time, and it might be over a fence on a lot line. Person's constructing a fence on my lot. I want you to come and do something about it. You know what? That's not our department. It's a civil matter. If that fence is being built on your lot and you're saying that they're trespassing, then call the OPP. We're not dealing with that. We don't have a fence bylaw. And a lot of the complaints that we deal with, the neighbors don't get along. It's that simple. Like, they could be in dispute for a long time, and this bylaw here is an opportunity for something like that to get addressed. And not having that neighbor have to approach the neighbor that they can't get along.
I know, it's a two-edged sword. It makes it available to clear up the problem.
Yep.
And it gives the person an avenue to do it. I guess it's just I don't like so-and-so, I'm gonna get them. That's what I don't want. And somehow you would need to identify that. And I don't know if there's a way of you settling that issue somehow, or it goes to the bylaw. I don't know.
I've been in a
You'll know
situation.
it.
Oh yeah, I've been in a situation for both circumstances. I've been in a situation where I would call both neighbors to the lot line to deal with the issue. And speaking from experience, you might not get any resolution at all, right? So this bylaw provides that option. And if the grass is 6.5 inches tall, I'm not gonna go there with the tape. If it's tall enough to be cut, then it should be cut. Nobody wants to look at as a neighbor. So, but we're not there to mutually bring a friendship back that might not be repaired, right? So I think it's a good tidy bylaw. There's been a lot of thought put into it. We've had our solicitor review it as well. So.
Trev, the biggest thing is that all of our bylaws, that's how enforcement is done. Is by complaint-driven process. Like, all of our bylaw enforcement is done that way. Like, there is no, any contravention to a bylaw, if you got somebody who's got a burr up their saddle and doesn't like you, they can put any complaint in and do that. The argument is that whether they're a nuisance in the fact that there's no evidence to warrant the complaint, and I think my perspective is that needs to be that needs to come back from a report if the bylaw enforcement officer or the chief building official believes that they're getting a significant amount of complaints that are not of have validity, then we need to talk about how we remedy that. But until we have that, I don't think we get into the point of who's going to pay for what. We got to give the ratepayers an avenue to complain, And this is a way that they can complain. The only way we can do that is by bylaw enforcement, and bylaw enforcement requires complaint-driven process. Because we don't have bylaw enforcer driving around checking everybody's grass and checking everybody's property. So, at the end of the day, that is the level of service that North Huron has established. It's complaint-driven. If council wants to change that, council has every right to change that, but there's costs associated to that. So, that's the part I think we need to be cognizant of when we're talking about this policy.
One other one, through you, Reed. How does this bylaw sort of mix with our neighbors? Like, is it kind of similar to a point? Is it extreme to a point?
Speaking for Morris Turnberry, Morris Turnberry will be reviewing this same bylaw, other than the wording changes, probably at the next council meeting. So what we're trying to do is to make sure things are consistent when we're providing that shared service, and it's a lot easier. Right now, even with the zoning bylaw, there's differences in both, so you have to actually physically go to each bylaw to read it. If we have bylaws that are the same, it's a lot easier for enforcement, it's a lot quicker as well. So this same one will be going to Morris Turnberry.
Any other questions or comments? Go ahead, Paul.
Yes, I see it, since this is a draft, I'm wondering when you, in there, I'm sorry, I didn't mark down the number that deals with is dog excrement. Could we put cat down? I got nailed by some ladies. I'm being sincere with that, like, they're wild. So just throw that out to you. Thanks.
Any other questions or comments? Well, I have a couple. So we know there's some issues going on in town. And I'm wondering, how are we going to handle the fact that, is this going to cover the fact that the grass that's owned by the town, so we own 33 feet or whatever from the center of the road so far in on a person's property. Does this have them obliged to cut that lawn too, or is it still they want to do whatever they want to do?
No, that's part of the bylaw. So it speaks to boulevards. So everyone know what it is.
3.55.
You had that one highlighted?
No, I know where you're coming from.
So yes, it deals with that issue. So every owner of the property shall ensure that all boulevards are kept free from long grass, weeds, hazardous objects, materials, domestic animal excrement, rubbish, and other debris. And then you need to go to the definitions to see what the definition of boulevard is. So that will deal with properties adjacent to boulevards.
So the other question I would have would be if somebody decided to dig up his lawn and put a driveway in or a stone garden in, and those stones are falling down onto the very sidewalks that we maintain so well, and people are becoming a trip hazard for people, would our bylaw cover that too?
We would certainly review it.
Okay.
And have our bylaw enforcement officer go out and take some pictures and go from there.
Thank you very kindly. Any other questions or comments? Trevor?
But in saying that, all of that has to be put in by a complaint. Whatever, I'm just telling you, everybody has to put in a complaint. It's not specifically just property standards by law enforcement officers, not driving around looking for those types of things. It has to be put in by a complaint.
Absolutely. And it doesn't have to be your next door neighbor. It's an eyesore, it's an eyesore. Having said that, shall we call a motion? All in favor? Carries. Child care department. Child care staffing structure.
Have a good night. Thanks for sticking around.
I'll read the motion that the Council Township of North Huron hereby receives a report from the manager of the Children's Center dated June 17, 2019 regarding the staffing structure of North Huron's children program for information, and further that the council provide direction to staff regarding the structure of the children's service. So we're going to have, I went blank there, Val, I've only known you 40 years. We're gonna have Val speak to this and we're gonna see if we can give her direction then. Sorry, Val.
Thank you.
Go for it.
So bringing, with consultation with the CAO and myself, we've been investigating and reviewing our current staffing compilation at the Children's Services Department, as we've talked about. And this is also being undertaken at this time to ensure that we have a succession plan, as I am eligible to retire in March. Not that that is my, I have not made any firm plans for retirement. But we need to ensure that the child care department can recruit and retain high-quality long-term staff, and that we have a plan in place to make sure our operations continue to be successful. So for discussion purposes, I did try to provide some history of the growth and expansion, and I think that that is the main driving force behind me bringing forward this report tonight, is that we have had some large growth in the child care department. So just to review it slightly, the main center opened in 1972. And at that time, there were only 3 full-time staff and 1 part-time kitchen staff. In 1976, we moved down to the main center, and it was licensed for 32 full-day preschool children. And that required 4 full-time staff and 1 supervisor. In 20,000, 10 toddler spaces were introduced to the program, and the number of permanent full-time staff increased to 5, and the supervisor position was converted to a manager position. So part-time staff at that time were hired to assist with delivering the program. In 2005, we opened and began operating a before and after school program at the old Wingham Public School. We hired additional part-time staff to deliver that program. There were no changes to the number of permanent full-time positions. In 2007, the programs expanded to offer 10 infant spaces. Additional part-time staff were hired to deliver this program, and again, no additional permanent full-time positions were added. In 2008, we began the off-site childcare program at Sacred Heart School, which has 16 additional licensed daycare spaces. Again, additional part-time staff were hired, and again, no new permanent full-time positions. So current operations include, so this is what we are currently operating with: 10 infant spaces, 25 toddler spaces, 32 preschool spaces at the main center, 16 preschool spaces at Sacred Heart. We have 13 before and after spaces at Sacred Heart, and approximately 50 before and after spaces being utilized at Maitland River. Following that, then that requires by legislation a certain number of staff to run each program. It requires 3 full-time infant teachers, 5 full-time toddler teachers, 4 full-time preschool teachers at the main center, 2 full-time preschool teachers at Sacred Heart, 1 before and after school teacher at Sacred Heart, 4 to 5 before and after school teachers at Maitland River, 1 part-time cook, 1 part-time secretary, and 1 manager, with a full-time equivalent required being between 18 and 21 staff daily. And as mentioned previously, our current permanent full-time staff, and when I say permanent full-time staff, this is the staff who have been hired with benefits and guaranteed hours. So they're a very small number, myself as manager, and 5 RECE staff. So our current paid permanent full-time staffing composition is 6. I believe, and I will, and it doesn't reflect that they did not appreciate us, but historically, childcare for municipal services was not considered required or mandatory. It was always a voluntary service. We always used to operate, or programs used to operate at a large deficit. So the reason that I'm bringing such a large picture for you to look at is because basically staff at that over the last years have understood that they may or may not be considered important to the municipality. So we never wanted to bring upon the municipality extreme expenses. So when we were operating with large deficits, we would never brought forward that we felt we needed more permanent full-time staff, even though we were using permanent or full-time hour people daily on a regular basis. But over the last few years, we have proven that we're cost effective and that we've grown to believe, and I think it's been demonstrated by the numbers that are using our program, that we're vital to be part of a welcoming and growing community. Another issue that's been identified, and it's across the county, Huron County suffers from this as well. I'm not sure of other counties, but I believe I've heard from Bruce County it is the same situation, that it's extremely difficult right now to attract and keep full-time staff because of most of the girls are young and most of the staff are young when they're coming in, and they are looking for permanent full-time. It allows them to buy houses, it allows them to buy cars, it allows them to settle down and make roots. I am not suggesting that we overhaul the whole program immediately. This is for information, and so we can do some planning as a group and we can look at options on how we could do it. So I want to make sure the programs remain viable. What I mean by viable is that they operate effectively and smoothly and that we're very cost effective. And we have done that in the past, but operations have become so large, it's really difficult for me personally as manager to be actively involved in each offsite location and ensure everything's going exactly the way we like it to go. I have some thoughts and I have put forward some suggestions. We can also look at other ways to generate what you think is the most appropriate. But this morning we had our surprise inspection from our program advisor for our before and after school program at Maitland River. And it was a very successful license compliance review. And I think the only issue she found and that she wrote us up as non-compliant on was that there was not an allergy list posted in the kitchen where we prepare our meals and snacks. So that was a non-compliance. But in light of offering a program for 50 children with all of their files and all the staffing files and all the regulations that we follow, fire drills and programming and other things, that's a very successful inspection. But she did recommend, and her thoughts were that an offsite supervisor would help ensure that things were going very smoothly up there. So that was also her opinion about being up there, because currently all of the staff up there are on a one tier. There's no one overseeing the programs other than how they respond with me. So there's no designated supervisor in charge up there other than they assume additional roles and responsibilities but receive no financial incentive to do that for us. They just do it because they do it. Also up there, scheduling and knowing which kids are coming in and out of the program for the days. It's all done out of the main center, where it would be more effective, I believe, if it was done out of the location up at Maitland River. So one of my recommendations would be to make our before and after school programs to ensure they're high quality and that their staff are following policies and procedures and that parents are dealt with in an effective way, would be to have an off-site supervisor that would assist in doing those kinds of engagements with the parents and in following up with the staff. So more feedback to staff and more mentoring and allow it to happen at the programs. Another recommendation I was considering or would like to discuss is the possibility of having an assistant supervisor for the main center and the early learning center. There's a couple of reasons I bring that forward. I believe that currently, out of the, say, 6 permanent full-time staff that we have on payroll, there's little incentive to take additional roles and responsibilities and incentives other than to look forward to taking on the role as manager if they chose to apply for it. But it's a really, really large job, and I'm not sure that that's that attractive at this moment just because of the amount of work that goes with the position right now. I think it would be effective to have an assistant supervisor who could deal with other staff when the main manager is away. But also, one of the largest jobs I do is scheduling for staff, and that it takes such a big amount of time because we're rural. And when we're rural, we have a lot of part-time children. And so we offer a lot of flexi care, which is a very big benefit to filling our programs. However, a lot of my attention and time could be better spent in doing our applications more effectively for play-based funding, health and safety funding, getting quotes for those types of things. Right now, I feel like, honestly, I just keep my head above water and that I'm probably not doing this best job in all areas. And I think that by having an assistant supervisor, you would be training them and shaping them and mentoring them to take on the additional roles if they chose to apply to be a manager. Another issue that's coming up is that we have a software program that we operate that registers all the children and bills all the families. I would say it doesn't bill them very well because it's kind of disorganized. But again, that's because I have myself trained in it and I have a secretary. And as in my report for information, our secretary has chosen a new career path. And so we are again going to be looking for a new secretary. So currently only her and I are familiar with the billing and the registration software. And to adequately train anyone else in the system, we would have to pull them off the floor, which we're currently short-staffed with. So we need staff hired to backfill so that we can do that type of training. And before I leave, I feel like we have to get a better system in place to have more people broadly exposed to that. So the county, we get a lot of funding too from our county, and I've currently never had any of the other staff involved with that application process. So I think over the next few years, we need to pull staff off the floor and have them help engage in that process so they're familiar with it as well. And we are hoping to do some expansion. So we have the opportunity when our Ontario Early Years programs moves out of Sacred Heart School, we have a room up there that we can allow for more spaces, which if you look at the previous part of the report, we're full in all of our programs and we do have a large wait list of 40 infants. So we're looking to expand that. But also in the long term, I think council's interested in moving forward with the possibility of more offsite, possibly in Blythe. And again, to do that, we need more help in doing the day-to-day tasks so that more effort can be put into the actual funding avenues and the structure and the setups and getting quotes and doing those kinds of things. So, touching on the recruiting and retaining of staff, it is something that the County of Huron is aware of. We work closely with them. We also sit at our provider table. I'm the chair of the managers of Huron County, and it's an issue across the county. And what we're doing is working closely with Fanshawe. We've been looking at things such as we did an online career fair where we interviewed different components of childcare and had it posted. And we had very little uptake on that. We also have been successful in getting Clinton to offer registered early childhood education diploma at their Clinton campus. And again, they're having trouble soliciting, getting enough people interested in coming in on that. So we're working hard at recruitment, and I'm not sure what the barriers are. We're unclear why that career is not as attractive as others, but it is something we're promoting and working on. So that moves us into the financial impact, because I know you're responsible and I know that having childcare can in the past cost money. We have been fortunate, and I know with the government change, I'm never sure which way things are going to go. However, we found out that wage enhancement continues at this time. We have not received any information regarding cuts to funding streams such as the fee subsidy for the families. We get play-based funding, we get health and safety funding, and we get general operating grants, and we've had no indication that any of those funding streams are going to be cut. So to highlight the differences currently in our structure, permanent full-time early childhood educators, those are the 5 lucky staff at the Child Care Center, can earn between $21.74 an hour to $27.17 an hour. So there are 5 of them out of the 18. Staff who are working full-time with their registered early childhood education, but not hired as permanent, earn between 16 and 19 and have no benefits. The untrained staff we have working in our programs earn between $14 and $15 an hour. A one-step permanent full-time staff gets 27% in benefits, so approximately $40,000 plus that 27 in benefits, compared to a person who's not permanent, earning only $30,000 and getting 17% in lieu of benefits. That covers their, what does it cover, Donna? EI and those things. So moving a part-time staff person who's working regular full-time hours basically would cost approximately $15,000 more per person. So they're currently working there in one capacity. We change their capacity, it would increase the cost by $15,000. There's currently $331,565.93 in reserves for daycare, and we had an additional $82,500 in working reserves that was set aside for our daycare roof. The funds in the working reserve is no longer needed for the roof, as the roof has been replaced with fully funded by the county. So in this conversation, I was recommending 2 site supervisor positions, and that council consider increasing the number of permanent positions by 2. So 2 off-site supervisors and increase 2 permanent positions in the daycare center. And again, this is for conversation. I don't need you to make a decision tonight, but I want to bring it to your attention because it's been so long coming. And I think we're in a position to make positive changes. And I would like to have like a 5-year kind of strategic plan where we could do it before I leave and we see what happens with life in the funding streams. So for future considerations as well, I think we are continuing to look at expansion because numbers seem to be dictating it with council's interest and permission. And I think that we need to consider looking at a regular or a planned way to evaluate how many permanent full-time staff we need to have in our operations. So I guess I know that was a lot, there is like a ton of information there, but it's never really come to the table before because we've never really been in a position where we've grown so much. Like it has happened, I would say, between 2005 and 2019, that we've grown so much, and it's becoming difficult as a manager to, run the programs really well. And I think quality and retention is our key interest at this point. So I'm just looking for ideas and feedbacks and thought on where we sit in your priorities, what your thoughts are for how we might go about doing this, what you would want me to bring to the table for your information. I'm just looking for ideas, basically.
Okay, Val, thank you very kindly. I'm going to open it up to the floor. There's no motion on the floor. Let's have a discussion. Kevin.
Thank you, Valerie. I'm just going to put forward my thoughts on it as a counselor. I agreed with you on every single point that you made. I find that the childcare in any jurisdiction, in my opinion, is 100% payback. I don't care what you throw into it. The more kids you have, the more moms and dads you have, the more houses you need, the more taxes there are. And as a civilization, we only get one shot at grooming our young ones and showing their parents that the municipality cares. And the health and well-being of the municipality starts from the bottom up, I believe. Your synopsis of everything, your your description of what the positions would do and how it would affect your organization makes perfect sense that I'm seeing in here. And I just want to give you and your organization my 100% support in what you're doing. And I see great ideas on this page. I know we are a council with a budget, but you know, not to put any of our other departments anywhere else, but you blow this, you plow the snow melts every year. These kids don't melt every year. They go to our schools. They're going to go to our high schools. They're going to be our workforce. They're going to be the next council members. So I just want to say 100% that I agree with the report.
Thank you, Kevin. Other councilors? Go ahead, Chris.
You're right, Kevin. And also we want development, and that means more families and probably more kids. So it all adds up. But the budget is important to all of us. The fees, are they, can you move them around? Are they still worth, can we increase them without too much pushback? Is there any room there?
We can. Over the last 2 years, so we've had funding to offset increasing parent costs because the county continues and the Ontario government continues to promote and push for affordable childcare costs. Do we have room or can we increase ours? We can. We can continue. I found the most success, or what I feel is most successful, is slow and gradual increases every annual year. Like if I have done 50-cent increase on our daycare fees on all age groups since I came back in 2007, and not once have we ever received a complaint about the fees increasing. There are some areas I would suggest that we could possibly do a larger increase, a one-time larger increase to position the space fees a bit better, just because I feel, number one, I will say we're in the ballpark of all the other centers for most of our fees, other than Goderich has extremely high fees. The highest fees, I guess you would say, but they also have a community that's positioned to pay well for them, or they receive childcare subsidy for it. So they remain full with that as well. You don't want to position yourself to be too costly so that you don't fill your spaces. I'm a large advocate of full spaces pay all your bills, because you're fully utilizing every staff that's in your program, and that's 100% payback to you. So I don't think you would get a lot of pushback, and that we could look at our fees as long as the county didn't push back too hard with all the current funding they flowed over the last few years. So fees are something you can look at. I know that compared to city fees, we're low, but again, you don't want to position yourself in the rural area out of a market, I don't think. There's currently very limited home child care though right now too, so I think this is a good time to look at fees. And I think home child cares are actually not charging much less than us right now. Used to be years where we would be charging in the 30s and they would be charging you $15 a day, but it's not like that anymore. Home child care people are asking for the same
40,
kind.
50?
Yep, similar to us. So we're 37 for a preschooler right now, which isn't a lot, but we also in Wingham are fortunate we have a lot of 2 and 3 child families using our services. So there are some families who are full fee paying families who have 3 or 4 children in our programs, especially when you do the before and after school care. So, you know, that's another issue to think about, but there is fee subsidy to help offset those costs.
Rick, your thoughts?
You wonder why people aren't applying for the jobs.
It's hard work.
Yeah, it's hard work.
I think it is reasonable wages for our permanent full-time staff receive reasonable wages. If I was an untrained person, and I'm not being rude to any other kind of employment, but the responsibility and the work that goes into working with the children, my untrained staff for $14 an hour work very hard. And it's a lot of responsibility and a lot of regulation. So moving forward in the future, something else to consider and think about is it really appropriate, or is it just a cost saving measure to keep our untrained at such a low wage rate? Like, we're a municipality and our entry level jobs are still minimum wage.
Thanks, Val. Paul, I'm gonna turn it over to you.
Well, I can see what you're saying there right off the bat. You need some help. You asked for an assistant supervisor. I think it should be done before than later. And then you have somebody leaving, we'll definitely get that filled. I feel though the people are at the bottom working, I feel they should be given more. It is a responsibility and very important. And I feel if you come back and tell us exactly what all that's needed there, so we could have a discussion, that's just my personal thing. I'd like to learn more on that. I feel there's a need there that we're hoping this place is going to grow. And I feel that can grow along with it, along with the live. I think it's something we have to look at very seriously.
Thank you, Paul. Trevor?
So this is about 6 years in the making. This has been talked about, not at my household, but this has been talked about by staff probably since I became a counselor. The issue, from my perspective, not working in the field, I think I drop my kids off and I think the world of them. Because I drop my kids off and I don't know how they do it every day, but they do it. The concern I have is the expectation. So as an untrained individual, why should I expect to have paid any different than an untrained position at Tim Hortons or Ideal Supply or anywhere else? Like, if we're going to set the expectation for an untrained staff to be paid more than the minimum wage, we have to be fair and understand that what that expectation means. That you're not going to be untrained forever. You're going to be trained. You are going to go to get training so that you can become a trained individual. I think so often we provide circumstances where we see a problem in untrained staff and we say, let's throw more money at it, we'll get more untrained staff in there. But the problem is we don't add the part of the expectation, so it just becomes a revolving door and all we're doing is paying more for the same level of service. My only concern is not from a permanent full-time position. When you talk about permanent full-time talks about guaranteed hours. I don't know about you, but when I was a worker, when I had a job, there's no such thing as guaranteed work hours. If I don't have the people or the job or the number of hours to work, I get laid off, whether I'm a full-time employee or not. So to say I'm a guaranteed person and I have guaranteed hours, the only difference between the two is benefits. It's called a spade. So if it's benefits, and if it truly is benefits from an analysis of the people that we have serving the other 20 people on our staff that are appropriate full-time hours, and it truly is, if they had benefits, we would have some concrete settlement that we know that they're not going to go anywhere. Now, there's no guarantee, but we have some concrete settlement that they would not go anywhere. Then we have some groundwork to change the way we do things in the child care department. Right now, we give them benefits, and if at the end of the day, they can still go, and we're still hiring and replacing them. So we're not gaining any more people. The problem is right now we need more to expand. We need more people. Ultimately, we can't serve the expansion with the current staff that we have. So the fundamental problem with is more people in the program. And knowing what that means and why people are not applying to registered child educators. Fanshawe College and these types of industries gotta be able to give us some background on why this thing is. Skilled trades is a big thing. And if that's the problem, we need to talk about it. How does the workforce and how's the Ontario government support us to make these changes? Because everybody in the world is talking about skilled trades. Well, the problem is, it's gonna be the same thing that happened 25 years ago. Let's flood the industry with skilled trades, and now nobody gets a job. And then we're back around the thing. Nobody gets a job for 20 years, and now everybody knows that nobody goes in skilled trades. Now everybody's in skilled trades again. It's a revolving cycle. So, per me is, I don't know whether it's benefits. And if it is benefits, and that's the true Neil, then let's talk about what that means. What does it mean to the municipality? Because in all honesty, it's user pay. I have treated this, I am a user. A big user. I won't be for very much longer. But I have always said that I will pay every last dollar and not have any taxation burden on the taxpayer because I use childcare. The person who's 65 and retired and got a home and is and a fixed income, should they be paying for my child to go to childcare? Absolutely not. As I look around to the mostly retired people around here.
Yeah, but we do.
You don't necessarily do it now. Back when we were running deficits, you did. You don't now. And that's the issue. We don't do it now. What I'm saying is we can continue that approach because we should have, if we think it's important, the municipality thinks it's important to have full-time staff and to grow the population, then the users of the program should pay for it. And whether that's through subsidy or whatever the case may be. But if there's two faults, I think, in my mind, it's how do we get people? We need reasons why we're not getting those people. And two, how do we keep them? And if it's increasing the base wage and giving them benefits, but we need to understand there has to be expectations that go to that. There can't be just the free for all. Here's your new money, and you're not changing anything. We have to have better employee management across the board. We had this problem in trying to make sure that we have staff that are following the rules and procedures of the departments. Employee engagement is a prime example. We have to get better at that. We have to have these employee meetings to know what is the hitch point. It's not just us guessing. We need to we've got 20 staff down there that would be more than happy to tell us. And we should be asking them, what will it take for you to guarantee us that you're not going to go anywhere today? And if it means $22 an hour in benefits, then that means it's $22 an hour in benefits. Or what do we need to talk about? What is the wage rates for private daycares? We got to talk about our comparisons because we're all about comparisons here. What's the school paying? Is the school paying, ECs are paying school, Cheryl? Well, those are people that are taking away from our people. So let's talk about all that stuff.
Thank you, Trevor. Vic, you want to say something?
I did. Thank you, Worship. Before Councillor Sykes started talking about benefits and things, and the comparison was used about going to some of these other restaurants or whatever to get a job, it is benefits. We're having a shortage with staffing ourselves, not just this department for recreation, but I was at a meeting earlier this week, and not earlier this week, it was last week, and they were talking about the struggles everyone's having with getting just even summer students or part-time staff, because the restaurants are now offering benefits. So they're paying them minimum wage plus benefits and things, which is so why would you? In our department, and I don't want to deviate from Val's conversation here, but even from our department and things, looking at our staff, that the qualifications they have to come to the table with just to work in the pool, why would they? Why would they, when they can go make that same amount of money and get benefits, going working at Tim Hortons or somewhere else? So Val's staff, kudos to them. I mean, recreation, we don't have kids for the term or a time of the day such as that they have and things. And it does take a special person to deal with kids like that. And it's not just running a program where they come in and do crafts. They're shaping the children in this community. They really are. They're making our future leaders, our kids and things. They're providing that basis for them. So, you know, their staff we really should look at the compensation for their staff and look at why, you know, we are not attracting the staff to take care of them and to stay. We want North Huron to grow. We want people to stay here. You know, if we outprice or outprice ourselves or something like that, raise it too high, then they're going to take the kids somewhere else, which also has a domino effect, because then if our registration was to go down, like, we're affecting the jobs that we have here. We want people to stay here, so we need to provide that kind of employment as well. Because all the growth that we're talking about at the different proposals, whether it was the A2A or down across the river here and things, and so that's going to be young families that you're giving it for. And we're going to need that. I know that when we did the orientation and there was talk about Blythe, the need for childcare in Blythe and things. Val's problem is she just doesn't have the staff to provide it. Could we work out some kind of situation, you know, where she's using a recreational facility, you know, as a possibility? We discussed that. But it's not the facility, it's staffing. She's in a serious staffing situation here, and we need to help her figure out how to deal with it.
Thank you.
And just to follow up, a couple of things that came through your conversation, Trevor, is the nice thing about our untrained staff is I believe that they sincerely do come in with an interest in, most of our untrained staff are currently apprentices at this time. And that's the beauty of being allowed to have untrained staff in our composition, and we are legislated. But I would say that in previous municipal councils, I've actually been recommended to have more untrained staff because it was used as a cost-saving measure during the time of our high deficits. But the pro to having my untrained now, if I could increase the cost, is we could offer it as contracts if you were going to take an apprenticeship program in our program. Like, we have so many options on the table, and you're right that we could ask for that commitment. In fact, I know one of the cooperatives, Clinton Way, is using signing bonuses as long as they will guarantee to stay for a certain amount of time too. So what I hear you saying that. Benefits, I agree. Even if the wage remains lower, offering benefits seems to be what the young girls really need. I think it helps them with their families. I think it helps because they have dental, they have the ability to get their medications and stuff. And plus it gives them that sense that they're important enough to be paid benefits in our business. You talked about the skill and why we're not attractive. I will say, before and after school programming is hard to staff because it is awful hours. It's just no doubt about it. It's a split shift and it's awful hours. That is an entry job. But at least if it was guaranteed that they had benefits and that there was a chance they could possibly become a supervisor there. We have a very flat program currently in our hierarchy. And what I think would also be attractive to these lower wage girls is the chance that they could move up a hierarchy and have some incentive to stay and have some opportunity for professional growth. We really consider ourselves a very important profession, and we really, while we do have untrained, and I don't think we use them in the same capacity as my permanent full-time staff. There is a huge difference in that way from my view, but to a parent's view, that's the person they're talking to at night. So they don't know that they're untrained part-time staff in that building, and they expect the same quality of conversation regarding the child's development or behavior issues or anything else. So I think it is important to value them and offer them room to grow in our programs.
Thank you. Go ahead, Kevin.
Just a quick question through you, Rita, to Valerie. Is there a benefit in your number of placements available to a trained staff versus untrained staff? I'm saying is if the untrained staff had a ladder work to becoming trained staff, is there provisions in, like you can have 10 kids for every trained staff, but you can only have 2 for every one untrained? Does that grow your numbers?
Because we are in such short staff, it helps us continue to offer services by having untrained, so that is a benefit to the program. So like in our infant room, we have to have 1 trained staff, 2 untrained. In each room, we have to have trained and untrained. And even today at our inspection, the girl I had running, because we lost 2 staff up at, we lost a staff up at before and after school just recently, not because she didn't love doing our programs, but because she could get benefits and a little bit more. She's going into an entry-level bookkeeping job at a poultry business, and she was going to be making $2 an hour more than what we were paying her in our program, and that's even with our $2 an hour wage enhancement on our staff's dollars. So she got benefits, she got a 9 to 5, and she got more money. Entry-level job, private business.
Yeah, that still didn't answer my question.
Okay, so what's your, sorry?
Was your problem is getting people and being able to expand the program. Does giving the untrained a ladder to becoming trained, does that allow you to bring in more children?
Potentially, as long as we maintained a base of our.
Because just paying them more and giving them benefits, if that doesn't help you grow.
It doesn't help me get more, it does help me attract more staff, I believe, if we are able to offer them a higher wage and more benefits so that they might
Just
come
more
in.
untrained staff.
Trained or untrained. No, untrained would
Your
be
trained
more,
staff do get benefits, do they not?
the 5 of them do. But I'm saying even our untrained staff would be more likely to come on board and stay on board and get trained, knowing that there was more room for growth. And being attractive with benefits definitely brings in more people interested in coming. If I can give them more guarantees right off the hop, they are more likely to leave a position and come to us. Whereas right now they might work in Clinton and they might work in Walton and they might be getting similar pay, but if I could offer them one thing more, they would likely more. And I don't mean to poach off, it's not good to poach off of our fellow daycares, but if we're more attractive, of course they're gonna come to you. Everybody wants to go work in Goderich.
But to grow the spots, you need the higher end people. So
I think you want higher end staff because the quality that goes with the training that they get and their ability to deliver the programs and deal with the parents is much higher with the trained staff versus an untrained staff. Some untrained staff are very high caliber, some are very not. And I also think it creates more satisfaction on your permanent staff when you have more capable untrained staff in your building too. That's the other attract, like if we can get more trained in is better, but also if you can get more quality untrained because they know there's room to grow, your other staff are gonna be better too because they're not so pressured. They're kind of carrying the load.
So this is a conversation that could go on a long time, but I think at the end of the day, and Val knows how I feel about daycare and how it's helped me personally. No doubt about that. I have 2 beautiful children because of you guys. I'm gonna ask you to come back at the next council meeting with a recommendation on the 2 staff members you wanna bring up. And the other 2 staff members, I believe you wanted to add. And then we are going to somehow, we're gonna put a timeline on this. We're going to have conversations about how we can attract qualified help. And I do know from my wife, it is very hard, gentlemen. Qualified help and how we can advertise for them better, whatever. And get you in a position where we're paying and giving what's needed for your staff to stay long-term, which is so important for child rearing. And that's a further conversation, but I want you to come back to this council with a recommendation on and how it's going to hit us financially. And I would like you to also, at the same time, if you have enough time for that, I'd like you to do Walkerton or Listowel daycare, what they're paying, what their benefits are, how many people are working there. Give us an idea of a couple different locations and what they're paying, benefits, et cetera, et cetera. That's fair to this council then. With the recommendation, I'm sure that I'll still have to go around with the council if they want, but that's the way I'd like to go.
And a fee increase if possible.
That's gonna be part of the financial conversation and how we're gonna build a better structure in that, as we move forward. But for the immediate needs of her problems, I think it's best to promote the two that she's asking for. Bring the two on or two up, I'm not sure which way you want to do that. Let's get that through, and then, you know me, there's gonna be deadlines. We need to talk about how we're gonna move this forward. And I'll want it done before Christmas. It'll be my Christmas present from you.
I can do that.
Okay. Go ahead, Trevor.
So I'm assuming though, that in that report will be how the staff are gonna recommend we finance this.
Yes.
So all I would suggest is, because there's a couple of conversations in here about what's in reserves and whatever. I would not touch capital at all. Don't touch it. Because we're gonna have to fix that roof again at some point, may not be next year, but we'll have to fix it.
They promised me not till I was gone.
So whatever, I just think operating, great, if we've got operating reserves, let's talk about them, but capital, in my mind, in my opinion only, they're off the table, they don't get touched.
Anyone else? Wayne, did you have anything to say?
No, we should just have a motion of council though with respect to that direction to staff.
I'll move.
Someone read that motion back.
Yeah. You say you had that.
What's that? Yeah, so you're gonna first, Paul's gonna second it, please read the motion back.
That the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receives the report of the Manager of Children's Services dated June 17, 2019 regarding the staffing structure of North Huron's children programs for information, and further that Council directs staff to prepare a report with a recommendation of options to improve the operation of North Huron's children programs and the financial implications of those options.
Good guys. Okay, any other comments or questions? All in favor? Passes. Thank you. Thanks, Don.
Thank you, Council.
Next, 7.8 is CAO. Dwayne. We're going to look first of all at the North Huron Strategic Plan. I'm just going to put the motion forward first and we'll have a conversation. Remember when I put a motion forward though, if you don't like it, you just defeat the motion and we'll put another motion, okay? It doesn't mean it has to be here. Do you want to read it first then? No. Okay. That the Council Township of North Huron hereby receives a report from the CEO dated June 17, 2019 regarding strategic planning, and further that the CEO be authorized to solicit submissions from the minimum of 3 consultants to facilitate the North Huron strategic planning exercise, and further that self-evaluations and submissions be prepared a report by the councils for the council's consideration. Do I have a mover? Kevin, sorry. Chris is going to second it. Okay, go ahead.
Thanks, Your Worship. So in 2011, council and staff commenced strategic planning exercise. It was an exercise that was completed in-house. It was commenced in actually the fall of 2011 and concluded in the early 2013. And that strategic plan that was concluded in 2013 was adopted by council in 2013 and has been the strategic plan from 2013 to 2018 that staff have been using to guide our day-to-day operations as we go forward. So that strategic plan, as I've indicated, it was a 5-year plan. That plan is now no longer for all intents and purposes. And the recommendation here is that this council embark on a strategic planner exercise. And you'll see in here, the recommendation is to look at retaining an outside consultant. And the reason for that is that when the strategic plan was done in-house back in 2011, 2013, that took a year and a half to complete that exercise. And in one of the reports that the CEO of the time reported to council questioned or was wondering why it was taking so long. And it's because of the other projects and initiatives that council had given to staff. So it just simply got put on the back burner and it took a little bit of it took a longer process to complete. So the recommendation here, though, in terms of to complete it in an expeditious manner would be to retain an outside consultant. And following a procurement bylaw, we're looking to obtain at least 3 price quotes. And as the recommendation indicates, we would receive those price quotes, complete an evaluation, and bring a report back to council with a recommendation.
So I'm going to follow up on that because I was there during the strategic plan. And it was a good strategic plan, but it was a living strategic plan that never lived. I might even have it in here too. No, I don't think I have it in. When I first started with this council, I had the strat plan with me at every meeting. It's outdated. It's too far behind, and it really doesn't speak to anything. I think what we should be looking for as a council is 3 or 4 initiatives that we should be working on over the next 3.5 years. And then everything we do, we focus on that, knowing that there's a filter down things that have to be taken care of too. We did this at the county the other day, and I swear the guy that did the county did it for me in AgriPure in Vancouver 25 years ago, but I'll have that conversation with him. It is really something that you do, and you want an outside person to do it for you, because we all have our thoughts, we have these conversations, and we have to have open meetings, and sometimes we hold back because, you might say something about grass and gravel that'll upset somebody. But when you have these meetings with these guys, they will focus in on it, and they will get us to a point where we can say, by God, we're all in agreement with this, and this is where we move forward. This is what we do to get there. This is the timeline to get there, and it's all planned out for us. The way we're operating right now is we're taking care of business, and previous councils have done the same thing, and a lot of councils do. We take care of business, everyday business. But we also have to have a future. So he will bring into focus for us, or she will bring into focus for us, where we want to go, how we're going to get there, and what time it is. And it's just, these guys are just, I can't recommend them enough. And as a former consultant, I'm really not big in hiring consultants, because I know we just make more work for us another time down the road. Oh, did I say that out loud? But anyway, let's go around the table on that one too. Let's start with you, Chris.
So you were wanting to tidy up the 5 points, reduce it, or stick with the 5?
When we do this with our consultant, we will take everything into consideration. At the top of the list will be the ones that we need to drive home based on they need to get
So
done.
priority.
Yes,
All right,
prioritize,
all right,
yes.
I'll go with that.
But we're not gonna do 20 of them. That, you'll never work if you have 20 things you
No,
wanna do.
no, I like the idea. We should go outsource it. And you said there's 3, or look for 3 people and choose, and there's good people out there that you feel? All right, yes.
Rick? Your turn.
I agree with that.
Okay. We're gonna go over to Trev.
Move on.
We're gonna go to Kevin.
Yeah, I agree with those points.
Thank you. Paul?
Do you need 5? I don't know.
You mean
5
5?
maybe? Like,
You mean 5 things to work on?
yeah, like.
No, he's gonna, when we're done, we'll all sit there and we'll go, that's what we have to concentrate on. Yeah, it could be 1,
Not
it could be
necessary.
10.
It basically come to what you have your consultation, and then you develop those priorities. So it's whatever is deemed to be those priorities. And then, so there's, when you develop a strategic plan, there's no set requirement that there needs to be 5. It's based on the context of the municipality and what they need.
Our conversations and our staff's conversations, as we go along, he picks up on it, he just keeps heading us to the point of the gun.
The issue is today our strat plan is 125. That's how many points we have.
Which one do you want?
We have a lot. There's a lot, that strategic plan, there's a ton of points. There's I know there's over 100. I don't know if there's 125, but there's over 100. It's a ton. So it needs to be more focused.
And that's, and as Trevor said though, when we did it last time, we did it in-house, we tried to do it ourselves, and our staff was busy, and we thought we were going in the right direction. And once I've seen professionals, I'm going, no, this really doesn't work, and you're picking up on that real quick. So without further ado, or if there's no more conversation, I'm gonna call the motion. All in favor? Passes. Next is 7.8.2, Community Improvement Plan. That the Council Township of North Huron hereby received a report from the clerk dated June 17, 2019 regarding the Community Improvement Plan applications. Intake 2. And further, that the council received 3 applicants and approved 2, received by the Community Improvement Plan Grant Fund for the purpose of facade improvements under the terms of the program. And further, that the council approved the 3rd intake of applications with the deadline of September 3rd, and further, that the council approve a 3rd intake of applications for the deadline of September 30th, 2019. Do I have a mover? I have Paul and I have Kevin. And did you want to talk to this one, Dwayne?
I can. Carson wrote the report, but I've been shepherding it through the process. So last fall, as council recalled, we approved a community improvement plan for the Wingham and the Blythe Main Streets. And we advertised for applications, and it's a facade improvement program. We advertised it on the website, social media, as well as a newspaper, and as well as the Blythe and the Wingham PAs have also been assisting us with the advertising of it. In our first application period, just for council's reminder, it was from January 1st to February 28th. And at that time, there were 6 applications received by the deadline. 4 met the grant eligibility criteria, and all 4 applications were approved. And the total amount that council allocated was $13,000. That left a balance of $28,000, and so council authorized to do a 2nd intake of applications with the deadline of May 31st. So those applications were received by May 30. 3 applications were received by the May 31st deadline. 2 of 3 applications met the eligibility criteria. And if those 2 applications are approved, the total amount of additional allocated funds would be about $6,100. The applications were reviewed and discussed by the Economic Development Committee last week, and committee reviewed and supported the applications. So in terms of the applications, one application is for Sherry's Barbershop, and the application is proposing to do some replacement of front windows and an entrance door. And the estimated cost of that work is about $4,500, and if you approve up to 50%, she would qualify for approximately $2,200. Second application was from a gift chest. It was to do replacement of an awning and some repair work. The total cost of that project was $7,800. Again, 50%, that would be eligible for about $3,900. The 3rd application was received from Wingham Super Storage. It was for Wingham decals. Unfortunately, it did not meet the eligibility criteria, so it's not being recommended for approval. So just as a reminder, in terms of the financial, in 2018, there was $42,000 worth of grant money that was received from the Downtown Main Street Revitalization Funds. Those funds are to be used on downtown revitalization and need to be expended by no later than March 31st of 2020. If the 2 of the 3 projects are approved, again, the total allocated funds in this 2nd intake is $6,100. The total cost of the projects would be $12,000. So at the end of the day, in terms of based on intake 1 and intake 2 of the $42,000 that was available for the community improvement program, we would be left with a balance of $22,000. So hence, there's a staff recommendation that was supported by the Economic Development Committee to proceed with 3rd intake with an application deadline again of September 30th.
Questions and comments? Quick, Trevor?
Just a comment, I think all of the intakes have been from from businesses in the town of Wingham. So I guess my question really is the Blythe commercial downtown great, or is it just not that they don't have any need for funding, or do they not have the funding available to match it, I guess is my question. I'm a little bit concerned that that's only in Wingham and the other wards are not utilizing the potential for this grant money.
I'm going to give that over to Kevin. He's a BIA representative and he can speak to that.
Thank you, Trevor, for that. You are right with that analogy. There's been some communication, I won't say difficulties, but just on people's perception of the CIP. And some of those misconceptions have been addressed in previous CIPs. Some of the concerns were over the amount of quotes that certain people had, or the businesses had to get in the process. And that's been more streamlined through the CIP, just through the process, finding the shortfallings of the program and how to implement it. I would say in Blythe, it's been more on the side of the business improvement committee itself in the promotion of the CIP. The conversation that I've had through the economic development on the CIP has been bringing back great ideas on the expansion of what this will entail. So I can see in future more applicants coming through from Blythe just because of the changes to the CIP process that was misunderstood at the first business improvement. The Business Improvement Association of Blythe has also gone through probably 4 heads of staff or heads of committee in the last couple of years. We now have a steady helm, and we are now getting full representation and full boards. We're having to bring up more chairs every meeting, which was a good thing when they were down to just not even having a quorum for quite some time. Just because that influx and influx of people to head that. That answered your question. I have a question through you, Reeve,
Just before you go there, Kevin, I also want to add, we were at the Economic Development Committee meeting the other day, and 2 of their members have volunteered to actually go up and down the main streets of both Wingham and the Belgrave, and because there's the storm Belgrave, and Blythe, and actually knock on doors and talk to people about their storefronts and say, hey, did you realize this is available for you? And have it with them, and they can then say, this is how you do it, and walk them through it. So the Economic Development Committee is taking a big step forward. 2 volunteers, do you remember? Jordan. Do you remember?
Jordan for sure.
The girl sitting beside.
Rebecca.
Jordan Hodgins and Rebecca. What's Rebecca's last name? Rebecca Rathwell are both going to go up and down the main streets and make sure that everybody in Blythe is totally aware. So your Economic Development Board is taking a big step forward, really getting involved. And I think everybody's happy with the progress that we're making. Go ahead, Kevin.
It was just a possible request of maybe either the CIO or the head of the Economic Development to maybe come to council and give an update of the expansion of the CIP and some of the things. I don't know whether staff has had a chance to research some of the interesting aspects that that the Economic Development Committee found out by going and looking at other communities. Minto had a presentation at the last Economic Development, and they were handling their CIP just a little differently than we were, and they were having quite a great different influx of what they were able to get done just by making small changes. And I know we were going to look at it, but maybe at some time that could be conveyed to council.
That's a good idea, and we will follow up with the Economic Development Committee to see if they will. And I also believe that George Bridge, the mayor of Minto, is going to come to speak to us at one time or another. I do believe to council on this.
I reached out to Mayor Bridge and have given him possible dates, but I haven't heard back from him in terms of his availability, but he certainly has dates from now until the middle of September, I believe I gave to him.
Okay, great. So that's a great idea, Kevin, and we'll follow up on that. Anyone else? Do I have a motion there?
Yeah.
Okay, I have a motion there. All in favor? Passes. Okay, next is West Aerial, and it's the invitation to their yearly what's that? Yeah, and annual general meeting. So we're going to be sending 3 delegations. Usually Bart goes, but Bart can't make it. He's our representative for West Ontario. The Reeve usually goes and the CAO goes. It's just, we've asked Trevor if he wouldn't mind coming along. I think it's something that would be of great interest to him. So the 3 of us have agreed to move on that one. So we're just looking for a motion for that the Council of Township of North Huron hereby authorize Dwayne, Bernie, and Trevor to attend the West Ontario Power Inc. Annual Shareholders Meeting on Wednesday, June 26, 2019, as a delegate for the Township of North Huron. Do I have a mover? Paul. Do I have a seconder? Rick. Any questions or conversations? Seeing none, I call the motion. All in favor? Thank you, gentlemen. It passed. Council reports are next. The Reeves activity report. I've been so busy, I forgot to make up a report. But I can tell you the Economic Development Committee was a very good meeting this time around, and it was a lot of fun to have contact with Mayor Bridges' staff, and they actually did a presentation over the phone, and we had them up on the screens behind us and watch what they've done. And as Kevin said, it's amazing how they've developed theirs. Anybody who was ever down the main street of Palmerston 10 years ago, go down the main street of Palmerston right now, you'll understand what I'm talking about. Just an amazing story of that community. I was at the In It to Win It, and that was a lot of fun, a lot of good ideas. Unfortunately, only one person won, but anybody that was there, it was quite an enjoyable time. That's about it for me. That's all I can remember right now. So we're going to go to 9.2 council member reports. Oh, sorry.
Sorry. No, go ahead.
Did you have any questions, Ray?
No.
Okay. Council members' reports, verbal or written. Anybody have anything they'd like to talk about? Let's start with Kevin.
Just our council's information. We held the first House and Dam and Bridge Committee formal committee meeting last week. As an initial meeting, it was mostly filled with just housekeeping bits, but I can tell you the people that are on that committee are extremely knowledgeable in reference to the committee, and bring a vast background that I think will move that decision-making forward, and I'm quite happy with the way the demographics of the ability to formulate ideas. I think it's going to be a great committee. I have nothing to say we didn't really accomplish much other than to set ground rules.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I just jumped the gun earlier.
No, that's okay.
Yeah, I noticed that you were jumping the gun last.
Yeah, a lot.
I just jumped in too. A few of us went to Nancy Mickey's retirement parties, and it was good. It was good. We were happy for her. She put 40 years in, and apparently a lot of the clerks in our townships here have been long-termers. Long-term, so like Winona Thompson was East Swanage, and she was clerk for high 30s years, and all of them had it in their homes. So people were knocking on their doors all hours of the day, and it was just some stories she was talking about. It was good. And my other one, the Soils and Crop drainage display they had in Clinton. It was good. Our county is strong in that department, and it's mainly because county owned. It was almost a 100-acre farm. It was a bad farm, like just little hills, and it was very hard to rent out and to have farmers keep farming it because they were just losing money. Anyway, so they gave it to the Soils and Crops Committee. Sorry, leased it. Basically, it's yours to use. And so they formulated different ways of draining and controlling water runoff, and it was good. new ideas, terraces, berms, and different ways of draining. And the whole idea was that they wanted cleaner water coming out of the tile. That was the hope, going into the creek. So that's the game, and not the game, but that's the aim. And they've got a lot of years to work on that, and I was quite impressed.
Thank you, Chris. Anybody else? Go ahead, Travis.
Just have a couple of things. I was fortunate enough to, having a young family, I was fortunate enough to spend a number of days at the Musical Muskrat Festival. I just have to say that committee of 8 put on an event of significant magnitude that, you know, a young family, if you didn't know what to do that weekend in the municipality of North Huron with a young family, you lived under a rock. Because, you know, they provided such entertainment through the entire weekend that anybody could take it in, and, you know, you didn't have to be a senior citizen, or you didn't have to be there was enough for everybody to take in and enjoy at some point during the day. So, you know, kudos to them. It's probably the best weather they've ever had. They have put on that event in torrential downpours, and this is probably the first year that they've had no rain, and which I think just added to the event. And I think they go about it in such a way that they don't care about costs. They care about that people are entertained, and that you leave there knowing that you've been fed, you've listened to some music, you've seen some local talent, your kids have got to play on something they've never played before, they fill them full of sugar and send them home. So, you know, kudos to them. I think that's an important thing to this community that's been sorely missed. And I continue to hope that continues over the next many years that I am going to be a resident here, because it's a valuable part of the community. The other thing that I wanted to mention was that the other positive thing that we have in this community is and Reeve Bailey has mentioned it more than once in his remarks, is volunteers. The volunteers of this community have seemed to step up when everybody else has a problem. Money's tight, issues are going to happen, you know. The volunteers of this town and the BIAs are a prime example of volunteerism that makes our town and our community as vibrant as it is. We wouldn't have a lot of the things in our downtown core without them. Clean storefronts, planters, the list goes on and on. These are the types of things that our community has to be important, and it keep being important, and I keep harping on it every time, is we need to find unique ways to support them without having to worry about the bottom dollar. And that's, I think, at the end of the day, if we can continue to do that, I think we'll all be in a better place. The last thing I wanted to mention is, and I've sent a message to Vicki, I was at Roma, and I had mentioned this to council a couple of times, that there is an initiative that I have brought forth as opposed to, I'm going to be bringing forth as a notice of motion, so at some point, but I'm getting some more details about what the ramifications of it for the municipality are, is the youth movement. There's a certification with regards to being a youth-centered community, is basically the goal at the end of the day. Goderich is one of them. I'm going to be prepared, taking a look at this from there's a provincial respect to it. I'm looking at information, and once I have all the information, there's a webinar this week that they're going to send me after it's been presented, so that I can get some more information about the application process and what it all means for the community, so that I can come back and bring a notice of motion to have a report designated for staff, so that we can look at what it means to be a oriented community, because I think we are losing a little bit by not providing an opportunity for our youth in one way, shape, or form in a context of not a council meeting, because, you know, youth don't understand this in essence. They just want to be able to be heard, and I think we need to give them avenues to be able to be heard, but not in the context of a council meeting or some other way. So, you know, these are the types of things that I brought up during my reelection process. I've talked to council about it a couple of times. When I went to Rome, I looked into it. I've now come back about it now that my work level is a little lighter, not great light, but it's lighter. I'm hoping to bring something in July as a notice of motion so that the council can look at that perspective, that initiative on my behalf.
Great, thank you. Great, Kevin.
Yeah, sorry, I should have mentioned this one through, just for council's information. I was asked to represent council through the Friends of the Village at this Sunday's rededication of the Memorial Garden down at the end of Drummond Street. There was about 25 people in attendance at that. It's looking great. I know the township has been working on that project with some of the chipping and such in the garden work there. But I just wanted to also touch on that there was a family there that was doing a dedication for their mother and their father. I didn't write down where they were from, but they were outside of our community. But their only attachment through Blythe was the Thrashers Association. That his mom and dad came every year to the Thrashers Museum, or the Thrashers Reunion. So their family thought it was fitting for them to put a bench engraved in the Memorial Garden because their parents liked North Huron so much. So it's a feel good situation. So I did bring gratitude and thanks for the support from the volunteers, from staff and from the township.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, just want to say about the farmer's market. It's nice seeing Crookshank Park busy on Wednesday down there. I understand Mr. Snyder, they ran out of meat, so that's a good sign. I'll guarantee it probably won't happen next time. So, but he was just taken back by the amount of people that that's why the sign's still out on the street there. He told me if there's any questions. But no, as good as Trevor said, the volunteers, because that's what's going to keep it going.
Yeah.
Just that it's getting used.
Yeah, that's great. That's just great. Anyone else? Anybody want to throw a comment in for Anita? No, I'm just teasing.
She's enjoying her holiday.
Yeah, she's enjoying her. Go ahead, Rick.
I thanked Sean earlier for this, the cemetery in Black. They did the cutting the grass and stuff for the decoration service. Okay.
Thank you very much. Any other ones? Okay, let's move on. Council member reports. We just did that. Comments by the members. I think that's the same thing. Notice of motion, we have none. 11.1 bylaw 59-2019, being a bylaw to appoint a building inspector.
So move.
Okay. Seconder by Paul. All in favor? Passes. 11.2 bylaw number 60-2019, being a bylaw in respecting litter, yard waste, and property materials for the township of North Huron. Do I have a mover? Kevin? Chris? All in favor? Passes. Bylaw 61-2019, being a bylaw to authorize an agreement for the maintenance of the boundary road between the township of North Huron and the municipality of Morris Turnberry. Do I have a mover?
So move.
Trevor, seconder, Paul, all in favor? Passes. Bylaw number 62-2019, being a bylaw to delegate and replace Schedule A attached to the offer of purchase for Henry Blythe Farms, Inc. regarding the former Emergency Services Training Center building. Before I ask for a mover and a seconder on that, I want to just speak to this a bit. We are so lucky and so grateful to have the Sparling family and the Cowbell Brewery. We're running into deadlines. We don't think we're going to meet with the build of the new fire hall and works department, and our staff have gone and talked to their staff, and they've generously agreed to let us stay for another month 3 months. 3 months. This holds up with that, and we know how big that company's growing. This is holding them up, but they are such good citizens. They said the fire department comes first. So I just want to point that out. And do I have a mover? Kevin, seconder. Rick, all in favor? Passes. That's good. Thank you very much.
They have more fire trucks than we do.
Announcements. The Blythe BI meeting will be held Thursday, June 27, 2019, 8:30 a.m. at the Blythe Community Center Hall. And I believe, Kevin, this is going to be a set location there now. There's been some confusion. Yeah, I know I went to one and nobody was there. So I went to the wrong place.
I was in the wrong place.
Yeah.
I live there.
So that meeting's coming up. North Huron Police Board meeting will be held on Tuesday, June 18th, 2019 at 7 p.m. in the North Huron Council Chambers. The next regular council meeting will be held Tuesday, July 2nd, 2019, 6 p.m. here in the North Huron Council Chambers.
Remember pictures that day?
And we're having pictures that day, so everybody have a cigar, a top hat.
Do we come earlier for this?
Yeah, picture of that.
5 to 6 for pictures. Wow, it'd take a lot.
We need a lot of makeup.
You would be surprised.
There'll be a special meeting of council will be held on Friday, June 5th, 2019, 9 a.m. at the North Huron Council Chambers here. So take note of that. We're going to have a special meeting. Wingham BIA meeting will be held on Thursday, July 4th, 2019, 8 a.m. Location to be determined. North Huron Economic Development meeting will be held on Thursday, July 11th, 2019, 8 a.m. And again, the meeting has to be determined where it's going to have. Is there any other business? I'm not seeing on here. Anybody have any other business? I'm not seeing any. I'll move on. Do we have a closed session? Oh, we have a closed session tonight. It's been so long since I have a closed session. Forget what I did. I'm going to ask for. What do I got to do?
I'll move to go in close.
There we go. That's what we got to do. Do I have a seconder? Chris seconds. All in favor? Passes. At